Soft, pearl-gray mist lingers over the Pacific coastline, blurring the boundary where the dark, towering evergreens meet the quiet sea. As the first breath of early spring sweeps down from the mountains, it brushes across a sheltered bay, smoothing the water into a vast, glass-like expanse. Far out beyond the rocky headlands, the open ocean churns with restless energy, but here, protected by a sprawling underwater forest of giant kelp, the surface remains remarkably still. Slowly, the morning sun climbs above the distant ridges, spilling a warm, honeyed light across the water. Golden rays pierce the mist, illuminating long ribbons of kelp that stretch upward from the ocean floor. These amber fronds weave together into a dense, swaying canopy, forming a natural breakwater that absorbs the gentle rhythm of the ocean swells. Below this floating labyrinth, the water is a deep, tranquil emerald, cradled by nature against the chill of the changing season. In this peaceful sanctuary, the ambient sounds of the coast begin to awaken. A distant gull calls out in a low, echoing arc, its cry fading softly into the damp air. With every slow undulation of the tide, the broad leaves of the kelp rustle against one another like dry paper, creating a rhythmic, whispering lullaby. A subtle morning breeze dances across the bay, leaving faint, shimmering ripples that catch the amber light. Here, sheltered from the currents and wrapped in the quiet stillness of dawn, the stage is set for a new beginning in the heart of the Pacific nursery. At the very heart of this amber labyrinth lies a newly formed raft of Macrocystis pyrifera, the giant kelp that anchors life in these temperate waters. Resting safely upon this buoyant cushion of vegetation is a miraculous arrival. Born into the cool spring morning, a tiny sea otter pup rests against the motion of the tide, measuring barely 20 inches from nose to tail. Unlike the dense, chocolate-brown coats of the adults, this newborn is wrapped in a brilliant coat of thick, blonde lanugo fur. This specialized natal coat is exceptionally fluffy, trapping countless microscopic bubbles of air against the skin to create an impenetrable layer of insulation. It is a vital adaptation for a mammal that enters the world completely devoid of blubber. Without this insulating fuzz, the infant's internal furnace could not cope with the chill of the Pacific. The pup's eyes are closed, its tiny pink nose twitching softly as it takes in the cool, salt-scented air. It weighs barely a few pounds, a fragile spark of life held aloft by the resilient fronds of the kelp forest. Every gentle swell of the bay rocks the floating nursery, swaying the amber canopy in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The infant's chest rises and falls in a steady, shallow cadence, completely unaware of the vast, wild ocean that surrounds its sheltered cradle, resting in absolute peace as the new day gathers its gentle warmth. Yet, even with this miraculous golden fleece, the newborn cannot survive the harsh ocean alone. Sea otters possess the densest fur in the animal kingdom, boasting up to 1 million hairs per square inch. But an infant's thermoregulatory system is still in its infancy. It cannot yet shiver to generate internal heat, nor does it possess the insulating layer of subcutaneous fat found in seals or whales. Its very life hangs by a fragile thread of warmth, anchored entirely to the living hearth of its mother. Without hesitation, the mother pulls the fragile infant upward, pressing it flush against the center of her chest. Here, skin meets fur in an unbroken tether of maternal care. She wraps her forepaws around the tiny body, molding herself into a living cradle that shields the newborn from the cool spring tide. Every breath the mother takes rocks the pup in a soothing, predictable cadence, while her own elevated core temperature flows directly into the infant, warming its tiny frame against the chill of the dawn. To ensure this precious bond remains unbroken, she begins a rhythmic ritual of grooming. With gentle, nibbling strokes of her teeth and paws, she meticulously works through the fluffy lanugo, massaging the golden fibers to fluff the trapped air pockets and stimulate the pup's circulation. This continuous tactile contact does more than maintain thermal equilibrium. It anchors the newborn in a sensory cocoon of safety, surrounded by the gentle lapping of the bay and cradled by maternal devotion. The tiny pup sighs softly, settling deeper into the warm expanse of its floating sanctuary. This profound vulnerability stems from a unique evolutionary strategy. While other marine mammals, such as harbor seals and majestic whales, brave the frigid Pacific waters shielded by thick layers of subcutaneous fat, the sea otter took a remarkably different path. Millions of years ago, as these mustelids returned to the ocean, they bypassed the development of blubber entirely. Instead, they placed their evolutionary bet on air. An adult sea otter relies on an impenetrable fortress of trapped air bubbles within its fur for insulation, maintaining a blazing metabolic rate to fuel this living dry suit. For a newborn pup, however, that metabolic furnace is not yet lit. The infant lacks the sheer biological capacity to generate its own heat through shivering, and its sparse lanugo, while soft as thistledown, cannot yet trap air with the waterproof efficiency required for independent swimming. Without the insulating blubber common to marine cousins, the newborn exists in a state of absolute physiological deficit. It is entirely ectothermic in practice, if not in biology, leaning completely upon external warmth to survive the coastal chill. This biological reality transforms the mother into a walking, breathing life support system. Every calorie the mother consumes is transmuted into radiant heat, channeled directly through her skin to keep the fragile spark of the infant's life burning bright. She is not merely a caretaker. She is the sole buffer between the infant and the unforgiving laws of the sea, holding the fragile thermodynamics of life safely against her heart as the calm morning deepens around them. To secure this fragile floating nursery against the invisible pull of the morning tide, the mother engages in an instinctive choreography. The sheltered bay is peaceful, yet gentle currents and spring breezes constantly whisper across the surface, threatening to drift an unanchored family out toward the open, unpredictable sea. To counter this, she reaches downward into the submerged emerald forest beneath them. With delicate paws, she grasps the tough, leathery stipes of the giant kelp, Macrocystis porifera. These remarkable brown algae stretch upward from the rocky seabed hundreds of feet below, anchored by powerful holdfasts that withstand the heavy Pacific swells. Slowly, methodically, she loops the resilient, ribbon-like stems around her torso, weaving a living anchor. The thick fronds form a soft, floating cradle that hedges them in on all sides, creating a tranquil marine haven within the larger bay. This kelp canopy does more than simply prevent drift. It acts as a natural wave break, dampening the rhythmic motion of the ocean into a gentle, swaying lullaby. Within this botanical sanctuary, the mother and child bob in gentle unison with the water's breath. The golden light of dawn filters down through the amber ribbons overhead, casting dappled shadows across the water's surface as the pair remains safely moored to the quiet floor of the sea. Within this woven harbor of amber fronds, the frantic demands of birth slowly fade into a profound, restorative quiet. The newborn pup surrenders completely to the safety of its mother's chest, its tiny body going soft and heavy as sleep takes hold. Lacking the dense layers of blubber that protect older marine mammals from the chill of the Pacific, the infant's survival now hinges entirely on this peaceful state of rest. By remaining still, it conserves precious metabolic energy, allowing the mother's radiant body heat to thoroughly warm its downy, air-trapping coat of lanugo. All around them, the bay breathes in a slow, rhythmic cadence. The ambient sounds of the awakening world weave together into a natural lullaby. Distant seabirds call softly across the water, their cries muffled by the morning mist, while the ocean's swells roll beneath the kelp canopy with a steady, hypnotic pulse. The gentle rustling of ribbon-like leaves against their fur provides a soft, tactile white noise, masking the vast emptiness of the open sea beyond. Securely moored to the submerged forest, the mother rests her chin gently atop the infant's blonde head. With every breath she takes, her chest rises and falls in a slow, predictable wave, rocking the sleeping pup in an unbroken cradle of warmth and motion. As the golden light of early spring climbs higher into the coastal pines, warming the tranquil waters of the bay, the tiny family drifts together in a perfect, undisturbed harmony, resting deeply as the new day begins. As the late afternoon light softens across the calm coastal shallows, painting the surface of the Pacific in long, amber strokes, the rhythmic pulse of gentle ocean swells brushes against the shore. Distant seabird calls drift softly on the breeze, blending with the rustling of kelp fronds swaying just beneath the surface. In this tranquil nursery, a newborn sea otter pup floats securely upon the water, cradled by its mother in a quiet display of evolutionary adaptation. Unlike whales, seals, and walruses, marine mammals that rely on thick layers of subcutaneous blubber to insulate against the biting chill of cold ocean waters, the sea otter took an entirely different path. Beneath the water's surface, a marine existence demands rigorous thermal regulation, yet the otter's body remains remarkably slender and agile. Evolution bypassed the heavy, heat-storing fat deposits common to its oceanic neighbors. Instead, the otter's survival depends on a physiological strategy centered entirely around air retention. To maintain a high core body temperature in freezing seas without the aid of blubber, the sea otter evolved the densest fur coat in the natural world, with up to 1 million individual hairs packed into every single square inch of skin. This living thermal barrier operates on a principle closer to dry suit technology than traditional mammalian hair. Guard hairs create a waterproof canopy that shelters an underfur of extraordinary fineness, locking in microscopic layers of air right against the skin. Water never truly reaches the animal's epidermis. In these serene shallows, this marvelous architecture of insulation makes life possible. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the water, the mother pauses to rest, her breathing steady and deep, matching the slow, hypnotic cadence of the sea. Beneath the surface of this intricate pelt lies a microscopic wonderland of evolutionary design. Each square inch of skin anchors a breathtaking forest of fibers, counting up to 1 million individual hairs, a density unmatched anywhere else in the animal kingdom. By comparison, a human head carries around 100,000 hairs total. The tiny otter possesses 10 times that number within a space no larger than a postage stamp. This astonishing coat is divided into 2 distinct layers, each engineered for survival. The outer layer consists of long, transparent guard hairs that overlap in a precise, shingle-like pattern. When wet, these guard hairs mat together instantly, forming a waterproof shield that seals out the frigid ocean completely. Beneath this protective thatch lies the true marvel of thermoregulation, the underfur. These secondary hairs are so incredibly fine and crimped that they resemble the softest down, catching and holding millions of microscopic air bubbles directly against the skin. Water molecules are physically barred from reaching the epidermis, meaning the otter's skin stays entirely dry, even while diving through icy depths. This trapped thermal barrier acts as an invisible dry suit, insulating the warm-blooded body far more effectively than any blanket of fat could manage. As the gentle ocean's swells pulse outward, a few stray droplets of water drip from the mother's fur, pattering softly against the calm surface. The delicate architecture of her coat holds fast, a masterpiece of biological engineering quietly at work in the fading light. This invisible blanket of air is the solitary reason the sea otter can endure water temperatures that would otherwise drain core body heat in minutes. Lacking the heavy subcutaneous blubber that insulates whales and seals, the otter relies completely on this delicate, trapped atmosphere. The physics of the system are absolute. So long as the air stays locked within the crimped underfur, the cold ocean cannot touch the skin. As a gentle ocean swell lifts the resting mother, the rustling kelp fronds brush softly against her flank, accompanied by the faint sound of water dripping from her fur as she shifts her weight. Every bubble trapped within her coat works as a miniature thermal pane. Heat radiating from her high metabolic rate, necessary to fuel a body without fat reserves, warms the microscopic pockets of air, creating a personalized microclimate that wraps around her frame. For her newborn pup, this system is still developing, making every pocket of trapped air a precious shield against the spring chill. When she blows soft, rhythmic air into the infant's coat during grooming, she is manually seating this thermal armor, ensuring that the tiny body remains buoyant and warm. Distant seabird calls echo softly across the bay as the afternoon wanes, casting a golden hue over the glassy shallows. The water laps in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, cradling the pair in a sanctuary of warmth, buoyed entirely by the quiet genius of nature's finest insulation. Attention turns now to the rhythmic, sweeping motions of the mother as she dedicates her afternoon to the intricate art of grooming. With soft maternal vocalizations, a series of low, comforting coos, she pulls the tiny, squirming form of her pup onto her chest. Her teeth and forepaws move with tireless precision, working through the plush, chestnut-brown fibers with the practiced care of an artisan. Every square inch of the infant's coat receives her devoted attention. The sea otter possesses up to 1 million hairs per square inch, an astronomical density unmatched in the animal kingdom. And keeping this living garment functional requires relentless maintenance. She combs through the guard hairs, gently nibbling and licking to lift away microscopic bits of debris and salt that might otherwise compromise the waterproof seal. As she grooms, she re-injects vital microbubbles of air back into the dense underfur. This mechanical action is essential. Without this daily ritual of fluffing and cleaning, the hair mats, the air escapes, and the delicate thermal defense fails. Her paws glide rhythmically from the infant's chin down to its tiny tail, pressing air deep into the fibers until the coat billows outward, transformed into a silver-sheened puff of absolute insulation. The sound of water dripping from her fur blends seamlessly with the gentle ocean swells rocking the shallow bay. She pauses only to nuzzle the top of the infant's head, smoothing the wet fur between its oversized ears before resuming her steady, hypnotic work. Every stroke is an investment in survival, sealing the tiny body against the chill of the spring tide and ensuring the newborn remains safely encased in its warm, buoyant cloud of trapped air. This miraculous quilt of trapped air does far more than keep the newborn warm. It transforms the little body into an organic cork. Without a single ounce of subcutaneous blubber to weigh it down, the sea otter relies entirely on its pelt for physical equilibrium. The sheer volume of microscopic bubbles held within the million hairs per inch density creates an extreme, unstoppable positive buoyancy. Released momentarily from the warmth of its mother's chest, the infant discovers this innate physical law for the very first time. It pops to the surface of the calm coastal shallows like a light, air-filled sphere, riding high and dry upon the water's skin. The gentle ocean swells past silently beneath it, rocking the tiny, fuzzy form without ever tipping it below the surface. This unusual anatomical design dictates every facet of the otter's existence, because the trapped air makes sinking nearly impossible without a deliberate, muscular effort. The animal rests, sleeps, and nurses entirely on its back. To remain submerged requires continuous, active paddling, meaning that inaction naturally defaults to floating. The infant stretches out its tiny paws, testing the limits of this natural flotation device. As the rustling kelp fronds brush gently against its buoyant belly, the pup drifts with effortless grace, cradled by the water and sustained by the invisible armor of air woven deep into its fur. As the late afternoon transitions quietly toward evening, the calm coastal shallows take on a deeper amber hue. Tethered securely by nature's green ribbons, the newborn practices the art of independent repose. The giant macrocystis fronds, thick and leathery, act as natural anchors in the gentle ocean swells, their long stems looping gently around the tiny, drifting form to keep it from wandering out into the open bay. The infant drapes its body across the swaying kelp canopy, letting the flexible brown blades cradle its back. Soft maternal vocalizations, a low, rhythmic cooing, drift across the water from nearby, guiding the resting youngster as the rhythmic rustling kelp fronds brush softly against its flanks. With each slow undulation of the underwater forest, the pup adjusts its balance, tilting its head and lifting a tiny webbed hind paw to test the water's surface tension. Without any effort at all, the buoyant little body rises and falls with the passing swells. The water drips quietly from its newly fluffed fur, returning to the sea in tiny, sparkling beads before the pelt instantly reseals its barrier of air. Distant seabird calls echo softly overhead, marking the slow descent of the sun toward the horizon. Surrounded by the rustling sanctuary of the kelp, the infant yields completely to the soothing motion of the tide, drifting peacefully in the cradle of the sea. The golden light of late afternoon softens, stretching long, amber reflections across the rolling surface of the outer Pacific. At the ragged boundary where the open ocean meets the sheltering canopy of giant kelp, the water breathes in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Giant fronds of macrocystis pyrifera sway in unison beneath the surface, tracing lazy arcs through the cooling brine. From somewhere out in the deep blue, a low-frequency swell approaches, a massive, gentle undulation borne miles away. It lifts the edge of the kelp forest effortlessly, creating a quiet, rolling swell that pulses through the water column. As the swell passes, the broad leaves brush against one another with a soft, papery rustle, accompanied by the gentle lapping of water against hidden reefs. High above, the calls of distant gulls and cormorants drift downward on a shifting evening breeze that carries the crisp, salty tang of the open sea. With the fading of the sun, the air turns cool, and a deep, restorative hush settles over the coastal waters. The ocean settles into its twilight cadence, rocking the marine world in a cradle of endless blue. Amidst this vast and tranquil expanse, shielded by the swaying pillars of the underwater forest, the stage is set for the quiet magic of the coming night. As the outgoing evening tide begins to pull against the outer edge of the forest, an invisible current threatens to sweep the vulnerable pair into the open Pacific. To counter the steady seaward drift, the mother initiates a specialized behavioral adaptation perfected over millennia of coastal living. Reaching up with her dexterous forepaws, she gathers the tough, rubbery stems of the giant kelp, Macrocystis pyrifera. With practiced, deliberate movements, she loops the long, golden-brown strands across her torso, winding the resilient vegetation securely around her waist. She twists the pneumatic bulbs, each filled with buoyant gas that keeps the canopy reaching toward the sunlight, until a natural, living harness forms around them. This vegetative anchor tethers the small family to the subterranean rock floor far below, holding them fast against the shifting ocean currents. Entwined within this leafy hammock, the mother and her newborn are transformed into a stationary raft. The tough kelp lines stretch taut and then slacken in a gentle tug of war with the water, absorbing the kinetic energy of the coastal drift. The pup rests safely against her chest, shielded from the surrounding turbulence. Secured by the kelp canopy, the mother rests her chin lightly on her infant's head, breathing in the familiar scent of downy fur as the ocean rocks them in place. Freed from the immediate pull of the tide, the resting pair begins to sway in unison with the gentle undulation of the water. Beneath them, deep ocean swells roll inward from the horizon, lifting the massive golden canopy in a slow, rhythmic breath. Each time the swell arrives, the kelp harness stretches taut, and the mother and pup are carried upward on a smooth, liquid hill. For the newborn, this is the first true introduction to the vast fluid mechanics of the open Pacific. As the water lifts them toward the fading evening light, gravity gently tugs the infant downward against its mother's chest. The pup's tiny muscles twitch instinctively in response to the rolling motion. Without prior experience, the newborn makes micro-adjustments in its posture, shifting its weight to maintain a secure center of gravity upon the buoyant surface of her belly. This innate balancing reflex is critical for survival in a marine world that never stands still. The inner ear, already finely tuned to fluid dynamics, registers the subtle shifts in pressure and momentum, teaching the young mammal how to ride the waves rather than fight them. The vertical journey is entirely weightless. As the swell crests and softly descends into the trough, the water laps soothingly around the edges of the kelp raft. The pup yields completely to the cadence, letting the rise and fall lull its senses. Surrounded by the gentle rocking of the sea, the tiny body relaxes further, molding its form to the contours of the mother's resting form. Beneath this tranquil surface floating lies a complex biological design, finely tuned for a life aquatic. To sustain existence in the chilly waters of the Pacific, the sea otter relies upon an extraordinary respiratory apparatus. Proportionately, a sea otter's lungs are nearly 2.5 times larger than those of a land mammal of similar size. This enlarged lung capacity serves as a vital internal reservoir, enabling the creature to manage buoyancy with precision and store vast reserves of oxygen for future dives beneath the kelp forest canopy. Every inhale draws a rich volume of air deep into specialized alveolar tissues designed for rapid and efficient gas exchange. Because sea otters lack the thick blubber layer found in whales and seals, they maintain a remarkably high metabolic rate to generate internal heat. This accelerated metabolism demands a continuous and abundant supply of oxygen, processed seamlessly through a cardiovascular system adapted to shift blood flow dynamically toward vital organs whenever submerged. For the newborn resting on the maternal raft, these internal systems are still maturing, yet the blueprint is entirely complete. The tiny chest rises and falls in a rapid, shallow rhythm, processing the crisp sea air with every breath. Each inhalation expands the small lungs, filling the tiny body with the vital energy required to grow thick, insulating guard hairs. As the mother breathes in unison with her offspring, her slower, deeper respiration acts as a calming metronome across the water. The steady exchange of air creates a gentle, synchronized sound, a soft, natural cadence echoing through the twilight, anchoring the fragile newborn to the rhythmic pulse of the ocean. In the months to come, these very same lungs will serve as the engine for extraordinary underwater descents. As the pup matures and grows beyond the protective embrace of the maternal raft, its expanding respiratory capacity will unlock the hidden world of the benthic seafloor. Those oversized lungs, currently rising and falling with such gentle, twilight rhythm, will eventually compress under the immense hydrostatic pressure of deep dives, allowing the adult otter to plunge dozens of feet beneath the surface in search of hard-shelled prey. Every breath taken tonight lays the physiological foundation for that future pursuit. The efficient oxygen-binding properties within the bloodstream will soon fuel daring expeditions down to the rocky seabed, where sea urchins, crabs, and clams wait among the shadows. But for now, amidst the quiet stillness of dusk, such rigorous feats remain far in the distance. The young body rests entirely in the present, its metabolic fires gently stoked by the rich milk of the mother and the steady rhythm of their shared breathing. The vast Pacific stretches out in the deepening evening, a realm of profound depths and hidden currents waiting to be explored when the time is right. For tonight, the ocean is simply a cradle of soft, rolling swells. The tiny chest continues its rhythmic motion, storing up the quiet strength of the spring tide, trusting implicitly in the biology that will one day carry it down into the dark, fertile waters of the kelp forest floor. Twilight paints the Pacific waters in deepening shades of indigo and violet. The last amber rays of the spring sunset dissolve along the horizon, leaving behind a velvety dusk that settles gently over the outer edge of the kelp forest. The mother and pup drift together in absolute stillness. The towering strands of giant kelp hold them safe in their green embrace, swaying with a slow, hypnotic grace as the ocean currents soften into the quiet of the night. Every trace of the day's restlessness fades away, replaced by a profound, nocturnal calm. They settle into a perfectly synchronized rhythm of breathing. A soft, measured inhalation rises from the mother, instantly echoed by the tiny, delicate breath of the newborn resting upon her chest. Their bodies move as one unified organism, gently lifted and lowered by the remaining breath of the coastal swells. Faint water laps against their fur, and distant seabird calls fade into silence overhead, swallowed by the expanding dark. Wrapped securely in the kelp cradle, the pup is completely enveloped in warmth and safety. The dense lanugo fur, meticulously groomed and filled with insulating air, seals out the cool evening chill. Buoyant and weightless, the small creature surrenders entirely to the sleep of a new life. Its eyes remain closed, its tiny heart beating with steady, peaceful grace. The vast, wild ocean watches over them both, holding the fragile family in the deep, quiet heart of the resting sea. As the last bruised purples of twilight dissolve into the velvet ink of a spring night, a profound quiet settles over the protected marine bay. A gentle wind whispers across the surface, carrying the distant, sleepy calls of a solitary seabird echoing against the rocky shore. In the deepening shadows, scattered silhouettes begin to drift closer together, guided by ancient instinct and the soothing, rhythmic lapping of water against stone. Dozens of sea otters converge upon the calm surface, seeking the safety of numbers as darkness claims the coastal waters. Biologically unequipped with the thick blubber of whales or seals, the sea otter relies entirely on its supreme pelage, the densest fur in the animal kingdom, boasting nearly 1 million individual hairs per square inch, to retain body heat in the chilly ocean. To conserve this vital warmth and guard against the midnight currents, they form a traditional floating raft, gathering shoulder to shoulder in the heart of the bay. With deliberate grace, the otters link paws, tails, and delicate flippers, weaving themselves into a living tapestry of trust and collective defense. Some anchor their bodies securely within thick, rubbery strands of giant kelp, creating a natural mooring against the drifting tide. At the absolute center of this floating assembly rests a devoted mother and her newborn pup, protected by concentric rings of resting adults. She cradles the small, buoyant bundle against her chest, safe within the collective embrace of the raft. The soft, contented breathing of many resting bodies blends with the rustling kelp fronds, creating a tranquil sanctuary beneath a glittering canopy of distant stars. This physical union is far more than an endearing social display. It is an ingenious physiological adaptation to life in a fluid world. Because sea otters lack the insulating fat layer common to other marine mammals, sleep on the open water presents a constant aerodynamic and hydrodynamic challenge. Without a tether, even a mild nocturnal ebb tide could sweep a sleeping otter miles out into the unforgiving expanse of the open ocean. To counteract the relentless pull of the water, the raft operates as a singular, cooperative unit. By intertwining their webbed hind flippers and grasping one another's forepaws with surprising dexterity, individual otters distribute the weight and resistance of the entire group. When the current tugs against the outer edges of the assembly, the collective mass holds firm. For those positioned near the margins, long ribbons of giant kelp, Macrocystis pyrifera, serve as heavy-duty marine anchors. The otters wrap these sturdy, gas bladder-buoyed fronds multiple times around their torsos, literally tying themselves to the underwater forest floor. This natural mooring system prevents any accidental drifting while allowing the surface canopy to sway harmoniously with the ocean swells. Safely cushioned at the core of this interconnected web, the mother enjoys absolute stability. She does not need to expend precious energy treading water or fighting the tide. Instead, she floats effortlessly on her back, her entwined neighbors absorbing the external turbulence. Securely anchored by the collaborative embrace of the raft, she and her newborn are cradled in a floating sanctuary that defies the shifting sea. Within this cooperative floating community, a subtle yet vital social structure unfolds across the water's surface. The raft is not merely a random gathering of resting animals. It is organized in concentric rings of protection. Mature males and experienced independent adults typically occupy the outermost perimeter. These hardier individuals form a living buffer, serving as the first line of defense against nocturnal hunters that patrol the bay's shadowy depths, such as prowling killer whales or cruising sharks. At the warm, sheltered heart of the collective, an entirely different atmosphere prevails. This innermost sanctuary is exclusively reserved for the most vulnerable members of the population, nursing mothers and their fragile newborns. Here, shielded from chilling night breezes and potential predators by layers of bodies, the mother and her pup experience profound tranquility. For the newborn, this central placement is a matter of pure survival, born without the dense, waterproof adult coat that traps essential warming air. The pup relies entirely on maternal heat and the collective insulation of the surrounding bodies. The mother positions herself with meticulous care, floating squarely in the centermost pocket of the raft. Her body acts as a secure, buoyant mattress, lifting the tiny infant high above the chilling wash of the sea. Surrounded by the gentle, rhythmic breathing of dozens of resting neighbors, the mother tucks her chin against her chest. She feels the steady, comforting press of adjacent otters against her flanks, creating a womb-like environment of shared warmth and safety. As the dark, quiet hours stretch onward, the protective architecture of the raft holds firm, wrapping the newest generation in an unbroken circle of communal care. Beneath the floating sanctuary of the raft, the nocturnal bay transforms into a theater of quiet wonder as the gentle, rhythmic swell of the tide moves through the water. It stirs millions of microscopic dinoflagellates drifting in the shallows. These single-celled organisms possess a remarkable chemical defense, bioluminescence. With every subtle ripple sent outward by a resting otter's breath or the shifting of a webbed hind flipper, the water awakens in a silent eruption of cool, electric blue light. A delicate, starry constellation mirrors the heavens above. Swirls of luminous green-blue trace the contours of submerged bodies, outlining the relaxed curve of a tail or the lazy sweep of a paw. This ghostly illumination reveals the hidden anatomy of the sea otter in motion, highlighting the dense, specialized fur that traps a vital layer of insulating air against their skin. As the mother shifts slightly to ensure her newborn remains centered on her chest, a faint halo of cold fire ripples across the liquid surface. The acoustic landscape matches this visual serenity. The chaotic sounds of the daytime feeding frenzies have vanished, replaced by the hushed symphony of the nighttime marine ecosystem. High overhead, a lone seabird calls out from a distant cliffside, its cry softened by the damp night air. Closer at hand, the gentle rustling of giant kelp fronds brushes against the otter's flanks like silk, accompanied by the steady, soothing sound of water lapping softly against fur. In this glowing, tranquil expanse, the boundary between the ocean and the night sky blurs entirely, surrounded by shimmering waters and lulled by the slow, hypnotic roll of the tide. The resting community drifts deeper into peaceful slumber. Even in the deepest hours of the midnight watch, the demands of survival never truly sleep. Within the secure embrace of the floating raft, the mother stirs from her resting slumber. Her dense coat, containing up to 1 million hairs per square inch, the densest of any mammal, requires meticulous, round-the-clock maintenance to preserve its life-saving properties. Because sea otters lack the insulating blubber of whales or seals, their survival depends entirely on this microscopic layer of trapped air. With gentle, purposeful movements in the dark, she begins to groom her newborn pup. Her flexible front paws comb rhythmically through the infant's fine, woolly baby fur, pressing out moisture and working thousands of tiny air bubbles deep back down to the skin. This careful cleaning process ensures that the pup remains completely waterproof and buoyant, shielded entirely from the chilling embrace of the spring ocean. The infant responds with a soft, contented squeak, nuzzling deeper into the newly fluffed warmth of its mother's chest. Satisfied that the thermal seal is secure, the mother wraps her arms gently around her child once more. She tucks her wet paws beneath her chin, resting her head against the calm, rhythmic swell of the bay. The bioluminescent glow fades back into a gentle, dark stillness as mother and pup drift effortlessly together upon the silver-kissed tide. All across the protected bay, the massive, interlocking raft of sea otters surrenders entirely to the restorative embrace of profound slumber. Dozens of sleeping bodies rise and fall as one cohesive unit upon the slow-rolling Pacific swells. This collective stillness is more than just peaceful. It is a finely tuned evolutionary adaptation. By anchoring themselves together, the otters conserve valuable metabolic energy, a vital necessity for an animal with a high-speed metabolism that burns through food simply to maintain core body temperature in the cold spring sea. As the ocean water laps quietly against their fur and a gentle wind whispers over the surface, the rhythm of the bay slows to a tranquil crawl. Distant seabird calls fade into silence, replaced entirely by the soft, synchronized breathing of the sleeping colony. Entangled in the sturdy blades of giant kelp, the raft remains safely moored against the nocturnal currents. At the warm, protected center of the gathering, the mother lies flat on her back, acting as a living cradle for her newborn. Her heart beats steadily beneath the infant, a soothing, rhythmic drumline that lulls the little pup into a deep, dreamless sleep. With its tiny paws tucked tightly against its chest and its waterproof fur trapping a brilliant halo of insulating warmth, the newborn drifts in absolute security. The ancient, rolling pulse of the Pacific cradles them both, carrying the entire family safely through the quiet hours of the night. In the hush of the pre-dawn hours, the rocky intertidal shoreline slumbers beneath a blanket of pale spring mist. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the briny scent of open ocean mixed with damp stone. Farther out, a low ocean swell breathes a slow, rhythmic pulse against the submerged reefs, accompanied by the gentle, hollow lapping of water against ancient, barnacle-encrusted bedrock. Here, in the shadowed sanctuary where land meets sea, the spring tides begin their silent advance. Driven by the gravitational pull of a hidden moon, the water level rises steadily, reclaiming the exposed rock ledges and spilling over the edges of shallow tide pools. Each incoming wave brushes softly against the shore, sending tiny fingers of water to explore every crevice and cranny. Beneath the surface, the marine forest stirs. Long strands of bull kelp, anchored securely to the rocky bottom, begin to sway in unison with the subterranean currents. Their golden brown fronds rustle against one another in a quiet, underwater whisper, creating a natural cradle that drifts upon the swelling surface, tucked safely within this buoyant canopy of floating algae, sheltered from the heavier ocean surge by a jagged wall of granite boulders. A mother sea otter and her growing pup rest as one. The rhythmic motion of the rising tide rocks their bed gently, swaying them back and forth in the darkness. Far in the distance, a sleepy seabird calls out once, its mournful note dissolving quickly into the damp morning air. The world holds its breath, waiting for the first touch of dawn to break the stillness of the coast. As the cold water stirs beneath their resting place, a subtle shift ripples through the buoyant kelp canopy. The growing pup begins to wake from its deep sleep, its tiny body responding instinctively to the rising tide. Slowly, it shifts against the warm sanctuary of its mother's chest, unfurling in the dim light. With a soft, sleepy shudder, the infant extends its hind limbs, stretching out a pair of tiny, highly specialized webbed flippers. These paddle-like appendages, broad and fringed with fine fur, are anatomical masterpieces designed for a life aquatic. Though currently small and soft, every toe flexes within the membrane, contracting and releasing in a gentle rehearsal of muscle conditioning. This early motor activation stimulates blood flow through the developing circulatory system, warming the infant's core against the chill of the spring dawn. The pup's webbed feet are packed with specialized blood vessels and dense networks of nerves, helping it explore the tactile textures of the water and its mother's fur. It flexes the joints of its ankles and toes, testing the spring-loaded resistance of the water lapping around them. These subtle stretches lay the crucial biological foundation for future propulsion, preparing the juvenile for the powerful, sweeping strokes it will soon need to navigate deep coastal channels and dive for benthic prey. Securely anchored to the thick fur of the maternal raft by loose, insulating skin and maternal muscle, the little one continues its morning routine of movement and rest. The mother remains a steadfast, unmoving platform, her steady heartbeat providing a comforting anchor as her offspring limbers its growing limbs in the gentle tide. Breaking the pre-dawn stillness, a delicate sound drifts across the water's surface. The pup utters a series of soft, high-pitched cooing notes, a tender vocalization born of lingering sleepiness and mild hunger. These frequency-modulated calls carry easily across the gentle ocean swell, acting as an acoustic beacon to the adult female floating just inches away. Sea otters possess a remarkably rich vocal repertoire, and mother-infant communication is vital for survival in the dynamic intertidal zone. Upon hearing the tiny squeaks, the mother immediately responds. She lifts her head slightly from the water, exhaling a warm puff of air, and releases a soothing, low-frequency contact call. This resonant murmur vibrates softly through the dense layers of her chest fur, transmitting both sound and physical reassurance directly to the infant nestled against her skin. It is a conversation older than the rocky shoreline itself. Every chirp from the growing pup is answered by this steady, maternal reassurance, reinforcing an unbreakable bond forged in the wild Pacific shallows. In the vast, shifting expanse of the sea, where distant seabirds begin to call out across the misty horizon and the kelp rustles in the tide, these gentle exchanges anchor the infant in a safe auditory cocoon. The low-frequency tones help the pup locate her precise position without alerting potential predators lurking in the deeper channels, creating a private channel of safety and love. As the mother continues her comforting chorus, the tiny creature settles back against her, its heart rate slowing in response to the familiar, grounding cadence of her voice. Beyond the safety of maternal sound, the young mammal begins to absorb the silent language of the ocean itself. Beneath its thick, insulating coat of underfur, specialized tactile receptors in the skin, and sensitive facial vibrissae, the long whiskers framing its muzzle, tune in to the micro-movements of the water. With every passing pre-dawn swell, the pup perceives the subtle pressure changes of the Pacific, feeling the weight and direction of the cold currents long before they break against the granite boulders. These physical sensations are the first steps in sensory adaptation, teaching the nervous system to anticipate the rhythm of the tides. When a slightly stronger wave surges through the narrow channel, threatening to pull the infant from its resting place, The mother shifts effortlessly. Acting as a living breakwater, she broadens her posture and arches her spine, using her own buoyant body to shield her offspring from the sudden force. She absorbs the turbulent kinetic energy, allowing the pup to experience only a gentle, rocking motion, like a soft cradle swaying in a quiet room. Protected by this biological buffer, the infant learns balance without peril. It lets its muscles relax, yielding entirely to the steady, predictable heave of the sea. Each minute wave washes over its webbed hind flippers, imparting an intuitive understanding of buoyancy and drift. Through this constant, rhythmic interplay between the water's pull and the mother's protective embrace, the young otter begins to harmonize with the wild coastline, sensing the pulse of the vast marine ecosystem while resting securely against the only home it has ever known. As the sky above the rocky intertidal shoreline begins to soften with the first pale hues of dawn, the ocean water warms just fractionally, stirred by the morning currents. The mother sea otter gently shifts her position, offering a low, rumbling contact call that signals it is time for a new kind of lesson. With delicate nudges of her sensitive muzzle, she encourages the growing pup to slide away from the warm haven of her chest and test its own natural buoyancy for the very first time. Because a sea otter's fur relies on trapped air to provide total insulation and flotation, the pup's dense undercoat acts like a buoyant life vest. Yet, trusting that invisible cushion requires patience. As the infant drifts a few inches away, bobbing gently amidst the floating canopy of golden kelp fronds, its tiny webbed hind flippers paddle in automatic, instinctive circles. The mother stays close, her dark eyes never leaving the infant. She forms a protective circle with her own body, creating a calm pool of water shielded from the broader ocean swells. Whenever the little otter starts to drift slightly off balance or lets out a sharp, anxious squeak, she reaches out a forepaw, gently guiding the small, furry body back to the center of the kelp bed. Under her watchful eye, the pup learns to let go of its fears, discovering how to relax its muscles and let the ocean hold its weight. It floats on its back just like an adult, facing the brightening sky. The gentle lapping of water against its fur lulls the infant into a state of quiet confidence, turning the vast, open sea into a safe, familiar cradle as morning fully arrives. The first pale golden rays of dawn break across the jagged horizon, casting a soft amber light over the rich marine shallows. This gentle morning illumination pierces the coastal mist, revealing a tranquil underwater world where ribbons of emerald kelp sway in slow, hypnotic motion. The ambient sounds of the shoreline shift as distant seabirds begin their morning calls, harmonizing with the steady, rhythmic lapping of the tide against the ancient rocks. Drifting peacefully together in the calm, protected water, the mother and her growing pup rest side by side. The infant is now fully awakened by the luminous new day, its dense, insulating fur catching the bright morning light like a shimmering coat of silver-tipped velvet. Every hair in that remarkable pelage traps millions of tiny air bubbles, a masterpiece of evolutionary adaptation that ensures both warmth and effortless buoyancy in the chilly spring sea. With the darkness of pre-dawn now entirely dissolved into daylight, the little otter gazes up at the vast, brightening sky with wide, curious eyes. The mother responds to its quiet, contented coos with another soft, reassuring murmur, their vocal connection as steady as the ocean current. They float effortlessly together, completely supported by the buoyant sea and the unbreakable bond they share, resting peacefully in the heart of the kelp forest as they prepare for the gentle adventures that wait in the sunlit hours ahead. Summer arrives along the Pacific coast with a profound softening of the sea, bringing long, golden mornings that stretch in quiet stillness over the water. Dawn breaks not with a sudden flash, but as a slow, amber diffusion, sinking deep into the emerald cathedral of the giant kelp forest. Far beneath the surface, slender golden ribbons of macrocystis sway in unison, guided by the rhythm of gentle ocean swells that breathe life through the underwater canopy. On the surface, cradled within a thick raft of floating fronds, the young sea otter stirs. Lapping water gently brushes against the tough, olive-green stems, creating a soft, rhythmic percussion that echoes through the quiet morning air. In the distance, the faint, resonant call of a seabird drifts across the glassy bay, dissolving quickly into the peaceful hush of the awakening marine world. The air carries the fresh, clean scent of sun-warmed salt and iodine. Here, sheltered from the heavier ocean currents by the massive kelp beds, the water rests in a glassy calm. As the first slanted rays of summer sunlight pierce the surface layers, they illuminate floating particles of organic matter and cast dancing patterns of light across the dense fur of the mother and her growing pup. The mother rests on her back, anchored securely by the strong, winding strands of kelp draped gracefully across her torso. Beside her, the juvenile shifts lazily, breathing in the warm morning air with soft, rhythmic exhales. The long, bright days of summer have finally come, and within this sunlit sanctuary, the stage is set for a new season of growth, discovery, and quiet exploration beneath the waves. With the arrival of warmer summer tides, a quiet and remarkable physical transformation begins across the young otter's body. For months, the pup has worn an oversized, buoyant coat of infant lanugo, a thick, pale, golden blonde fur that kept it afloat like an unsinkable cork, though it entirely prevented the little one from sinking beneath the waves. Now, this baby fuzz is gently shedding away, lifting from the skin in soft tufts and floating gently away on the calm surface currents. Beneath this fading blanket of baby fur, a magnificent new coat is emerging. Coarse, glossy guard hairs push upward through the skin, creating a waterproof outer shield, while a densely packed underfur begins to fill in underneath. This adult undercoat is an engineering marvel of nature. It traps millions of tiny air bubbles next to the skin, forming an impenetrable thermal barrier against the chilly Pacific water. Because sea otters lack the thick layer of blubber found in other marine mammals, their survival depends entirely on the microscopic integrity of this extraordinary fur. Attentive to this vital transition, the mother rises slightly from her resting drift to assist with the grooming process. Using her nimble paws and teeth, she gently works through the juvenile's damp coat, massaging the skin to stimulate natural oil glands. These oils, secreted from the base of the follicles, are meticulously combed through every strand of hair to maintain complete waterproofing. With each rhythmic stroke of her paws, loose golden lanugo is cleared away, revealing the rich, dark chocolate tones of the developing adult pelt underneath. The process is soothing, slow, and deeply comforting, lulling the growing pup into a state of heavy-lidded relaxation amidst the floating nursery of kelp. This continuous tactile interaction does far more than simply clear away the remnants of baby fur. It reinforces the profound maternal bond that will guide the juvenile through its first year of life. The mother's rhythmic, circular massaging motions stimulate the pup's peripheral circulation, encouraging the flow of warm blood to the skin surface and preparing tiny muscles for the physical demands of diving. As her paws sweep gently across the flanks and chest, she traps fresh air bubbles directly into the newly forming underfur, manually inflating the living insulation suit that will soon protect the young otter from the cold depths. Every inch of the emerging dark coat receives this meticulous attention, from the crown of the flat head down to the tips of the short, paddle-like hind flippers. Wrapped securely in the mother's chest hold, the juvenile yields completely to the soothing cadence of the preening ritual. Soft, contented murmurs pass between them, vibrating gently through the quiet morning water and blending with the soft breathing of the resting pod. Surrounded by the sun-drenched sanctuary of the kelp canopy, the pup rests in absolute security, its body temperature perfectly regulated by the intricate architecture of its newly conditioned fur, resting peacefully as the gentle ocean swells rock them both in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. With its coat now sealed and buoyant, the young otter slips effortlessly from its mother's chest into the liquid amber light of the upper water column. For the first time, a profound curiosity overtakes the juvenile. It arches its supple spine, points its webbed hind flippers backward, and commits to a downward gaze. With a soft splash, the pup breaks the surface tension and descends into the quiet underwater cathedral. Subsurface, the world transforms into a realm of filtered gold and deep emerald shadows. Towering columns of giant kelp, Macrocystis porifera, sway in slow, stately motion with the deep ocean swells anchored to the rocky reef far below. The pup hovers weightlessly among the drifting fronds, experiencing the unique buoyancy of a fully inflated fur coat. As the little otter dips beneath the canopy, remarkable physiological adaptations quietly engage. Its heart rate dips into a gentle bradycardia, conserving precious oxygen, while millions of microscopic air bubbles trapped within the underfur compress slightly against the cool pressure of the water. The pup's dark eyes widen, taking in the intricate maze of golden strands and passing flashes of silver baitfish weaving through the stalks. Without yet possessing the lung capacity of an adult, which can store vast amounts of oxygen in specialized muscle tissue, the young diver's exploration is fleeting. After just a few seconds of weightless suspension, a natural internal signal reminds the juvenile of the air waiting above. With a swift, graceful flick of its paddle-like feet, the pup ascends gently through the sunbeams, breaking the surface to draw a fresh, quiet breath of the warm morning air. Beneath the swaying emerald canopy, nature performs a quiet miracle of engineering within the small body of the growing otter. To conquer the ocean realm, marine mammals rely on sophisticated internal architecture, and the young pup is already developing the specialized adaptations required for deep aquatic foraging. Relative to its overall body size, a sea otter possesses lungs that are roughly 2.5 times larger than those of a terrestrial mammal of comparable weight. This generous respiratory volume acts as a biological scuba tank, allowing the juvenile to draw in and store a rich reserve of life-giving oxygen before every descent. Beyond sheer lung capacity, the pup's blood and muscles are quietly preparing for more demanding dives in the seasons ahead. High concentrations of myoglobin, an iron and oxygen-binding protein, accumulate within the dark, active swimming muscles. This specialized pigment stores oxygen directly in the tissues, releasing it steadily to the heart and brain while the animal is submerged. It is a brilliant physiological design that prevents oxygen depletion during exertion, granting marine mammals an endurance far beyond the reach of land-dwelling creatures. As the pup rests quietly at the surface once more, chest rising and falling in a slow, rhythmic cadence, these internal systems recover effortlessly. Each breath refreshes the vast lung capacity, replenishing the oxygen debt and resetting the resting heart rate from its transient dive-induced bradycardia. Floating peacefully amid the warm, sun-dappled fronds, the juvenile absorbs the gentle rhythm of the sea, its body unconsciously mastering the ancient, complex science of breathing and diving in the wild Pacific. Surrendered completely to the cradle of the ocean, the young otter drifts upon a natural raft of giant kelp. The golden summer sun reaches high into the morning sky, bathing the resting pair in a deep, soothing warmth that penetrates straight through the thickening adult fur. After the exertion of morning dives and the meticulous grooming that followed, exhaustion settles softly over the juvenile. Eyes grow heavy, and the small webbed paws tuck tightly against a warm, furry chest. Gentle ocean swells roll through the expansive underwater forest, rocking the kelp strands with a slow, predictable rhythm. Lapping water brushes softly against the golden brown fronds, creating a quiet, hypnotic lullaby. Distant seabird calls drift across the calm surface, fading into the peaceful ambience of the bay. Floating securely within this amber sanctuary, the pup yields to a deep, restorative sleep. Its soft breathing matches the unhurried cadence of the tide, rising and falling in perfect harmony with the sea. Here, cradled by the tranquil summer wilderness, the young otter rests deeply, gathering strength beneath the sunlit canopy for the gentle adventures of the afternoon to come. Beneath the summer sky, the ocean swells with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Far below the surface, late afternoon sunlight filters downward through the towering, golden fronds of a giant kelp forest, painting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the rocky seafloor. Muffled waves pulse a steady, soothing heartbeat through the cool water, carrying the distant, hollow echoes of seabirds calling from above. Here, suspended in the gentle current, the older sea otter pup pauses at the edge of the kelp canopy. This environment is a rich, three-dimensional ecosystem, teeming with life anchored to the benthic stone. Preparing for the descent, the young otter's magnificent lungs take in a deep, preparatory reserve of air. Its dense, two-layered fur traps a shimmering blanket of insulating bubbles, glowing softly like a coat of liquid silver against the amber light. Beside the older pup, the mother lingers for a quiet moment, offering a reassuring touch of wet fur before dipping her sleek head downward. Emulating her calm focus, the growing pup adjusts its buoyancy, tucking in its webbed hind flippers and streamlining its flexible, muscular body. With a gentle sweep of its tail, the young animal breaks away from the sunlit surface layer, slipping downward into the cool, amber-tinted twilight of the mid-water column. Every movement is deliberate, unhurried, and perfectly attuned to the fluid medium. The descent begins smoothly, carrying the young explorer deeper into the shadowed, rock-strewn domain where hidden mysteries wait patiently among the swaying stems of kelp. Drifting lower into the dimmer realm near the seafloor, the pup enters a world where vision alone is rarely enough. The sunlit amber fades into soft shades of slate and shadow. Yet the young otter navigates this aquatic gloom with effortless grace. It is guided not by its eyes, but by an extraordinary sensory network mapped across its face. A thick array of long, highly sensitive facial vibrissae fans outward from its muzzle, acting as an acute tactile radar system in the murky water. These remarkable whiskers are richly supplied with nerves, able to perceive the slightest changes in water pressure and microcurrents. As the pup glides inches above the benthic stones, its vibrissae sweep rhythmically back and forth, brushing against the rough contours of the rock face. Even in total darkness, this biological marvel detects the subtle, invisible movements of hidden invertebrates sheltering within narrow crevices. A faint vibration in the water catches the whisker's attention, signaling the presence of life tucked away in a shadowed stone alcove. The pup slows its descent, hovering neutrally just above the substrate. Its muzzle probes gently into the dark recess, the flexible whiskers bending and flexing as they map the texture of the hidden ledge. Without needing to see its quarry, the young animal recognizes the distinct, rounded geometry of a small creature wedged securely against the stone. The sensory biology of the hunt proves flawless, bridging the gap between the dark stillness of the depths and the purposeful search for sustenance. With the hidden alcove identified, the young otter begins the delicate work of extraction, relying on specialized anatomy and precise buoyancy control. To maintain its position against the gentle push of underwater muffled waves, the pup adjusts the air trapped deeply within its dense, double-layered fur coat. It tilts its sleek body, using broad, webbed hind feet as dynamic paddles and rudders to maneuver expertly along the rugged ocean floor. Each motion is measured and slow, conserving precious oxygen while navigating the complex labyrinth of the benthic reef. Reaching into the shadowy fissure, the pup uses nimble forepaws equipped with retractable claws to dislodge the quarry. The rocky substrate is paved with encrusting coralline algae and small pebbles, yet the otter's paws move with practiced dexterity. It hooks its fingers beneath a small, stubborn crab sheltering beside the ledge, applying just enough leverage to break its hold without crushing the carapace. Alongside the crustacean, the pup's tactile senses register the prickly, calcareous spines of a small sea urchin wedged tightly in the same crevice. Using its sensitive muzzle to nudge the spiky prize free, the clever animal gathers both items in its forepaws. Its muscular tail sweeps downward in a soft, undulating motion, lifting the young forager away from the seafloor. As it pivots upward, the surrounding environment begins to lighten. Distant seabird calls filter down faintly through the water column, signaling the brighter world waiting just overhead. With a fluid, upward kick of its webbed feet, the pup leaves the shadowy reef behind, ascending smoothly through the cool summer water toward the shimmering surface. The final meters of the ascent feel effortless as buoyant air trapped in the dense underfur naturally assists the young otter toward the light. Water temperature shifts subtly, growing a fraction warmer near the surface where summer sunbeams filter down in soft, wavering columns of gold. Tucked safely against its chest, the hard-earned sea urchin and small crab remain securely held within the fold of the otter's forepaws, a testament to the hours spent practicing these crucial motor skills. Breaking through the waterline, the juvenile exhales a warm, misty breath with a gentle huff, instantly clearing its nostrils of seawater. Surrounding surface ripples slap softly against its whiskers as the pup immediately flips onto its back, settling into the familiar, buoyant cradle of the ocean. Floating effortlessly without a single swimming stroke, the otter positions its prize on its furry chest, which serves as a natural dining table. Gentle surface ripples rock the resting animal in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Above, afternoon clouds softly gather, casting a silvery, muted shadow across the quiet bay. The distant seabird calls grow fainter still, blending into the peaceful hush of the late afternoon. With relaxed limbs sprawled comfortably outward, the young forager begins to groom and inspect its meal, entirely at home in the vast, rolling expanse of the summer sea. Dexterous forepaws begin the delicate task of breaking open the shell, relying on sensitive fingertips rather than sight. Without a specialized tool like a stone, the young otter applies concentrated pressure directly to the fragile peristome of the purple sea urchin, using its strong canines and flat molars to pierce the calcareous armor. Calcium carbonate tests offer rich, calorie-dense nourishment essential for a growing marine mammal operating in a cool, temperate ecosystem. Each careful bite is accompanied by soft splashing sounds as nimble paws rotate the prize, separating the rich orange gonads from the prickly, defensive spines that drift harmlessly away into the gentle current. Surrounding the resting forager, the muffled rhythm of underwater waves pulses deep beneath the surface, a steady heartbeat of the rocky reef below. The exhaustion of the afternoon dive fades entirely, replaced by the deep, restorative warmth of the summer air drying the dense, insulating guard hairs. Heavy eyelids droop slowly as digestion begins, utilizing the incredible metabolic furnace of the sea otter to process the meal. Fading light catches the silver droplets clinging to the fur as the young animal drifts further into stillness, cradled safely by the quiet, whispering tide. Above the calm expanse, soft afternoon clouds slowly gather, casting a gentle, pearlescent shadow across the tranquil summer bay. Distant seabird calls drift lazily across the glassy surface, rising and falling in a slow, hypnotic cadence that mirrors the peaceful breathing exhales of the resting pup. Every gentle surface ripple laps softly against the buoyant fur, rocking the young otter in a cradle of salt water and stillness. The coastal ecosystem quiets as the day surrenders to the approaching evening, wrapping the rocky cove in an atmosphere of profound serenity. Without a single fin moving, the otter floats motionless, completely supported by the dense, air-trapping underfur that maintains positive buoyancy with effortless grace. Deep within the core, digestion hums along at a high metabolic rate, slowly turning the urchin's rich nutrients into internal warmth. This specialized biological design keeps the marine mammal comfortable despite the cool coastal currents that sweep silently past below. The fuzzy silhouette blurs softly into the gathering dusk as sleep finally takes hold. A peaceful stillness settles over the entire habitat, breathing in time with the ocean's slow, eternal rhythm, ending the long day in deep, restorative quiet. The low, sloping rays of the summer sun stretch across the coastal shallows, painting the calm ocean surface in washes of amber and rose. Beneath this golden canopy, the intricate topography of the shallow rocky reef comes into quiet focus. Forests of giant kelp sway in slow, rhythmic motion, their golden brown fronds brushing against the surface with a soft, watery murmur. The gentle ocean swells roll shoreward, lapping soothingly against the tangled stems. Patrolling this peaceful underwater garden is a growing juvenile sea otter. Its dense, dual-layered fur gleams warmly in the late afternoon light, trapping a layer of air that insulates it completely from the cool Pacific water. Every movement is fluid, unhurried, and deeply attuned to the rhythms of the tide. Here, amidst the submerged boulders and pebble-strewn seafloor, marine life thrives in abundance. Yet, many of the most nutritious benthic invertebrates are heavily armored, protected by thick shells of calcium carbonate that defy ordinary predators. Accessing these well-defended food sources requires more than just raw strength. It demands a sophisticated cognitive leap. As the juvenile dips its head beneath the surface to scan the rocky crevices, it stands on the threshold of one of the animal kingdom's most remarkable evolutionary adaptations, the mastery of external tools. Distant gull calls drift across the glassy water, fading into the background as the evening hush deepens. The stage is set for a quiet demonstration of dexterity, neurological coordination, and the ingenious mechanics of survival that define the sea otter's world. With the smooth pebble held securely between its paws, the young otter begins to ascend toward the sunlit surface. Surrounding it, the gentle ocean swells rise and fall in a steady, hypnotic rhythm, cradling the animal as it breaks into the open air. Rather than dropping its prize or holding it awkwardly in its mouth, the juvenile performs a specialized, almost effortless gesture. Beneath each of its forelimbs lies a remarkable anatomical feature, a generous, elastic flap of loose skin that forms a natural, highly functional pocket. This remarkable adaptation is uniquely tailored for a marine mammal that lacks the opposable thumbs of primates, yet relies entirely on external implements to survive. The juvenile tucks the prize stone neatly deep into the fold of skin beneath its left armpit. The tissue stretches to accommodate the pebble, holding it safely against the flank while the otter continues to paddle and maneuver through the water. This living pouch acts as a secure cargo hold, allowing the animal to transport both dense stones and newly captured, slippery prey to the surface without fear of losing them to the drifting currents. As the otter rests comfortably on its back amidst the floating kelp fronds, the pocket remains closed by the gentle, resting pressure of the foreleg. It is an ingenious evolutionary compromise, a loose, seemingly oversized skin envelope that grants this aquatic creature the carrying capacity of pockets, perfectly designed for an existence spent entirely between the ocean floor and the sky. Not just any rock will serve as an effective anvil for the challenges of the shallow, rocky reef. As the juvenile drifts near a submerged shelf of basalt, it pauses to evaluate its options with remarkable neurological sophistication. Descending in a shallow, graceful dive, the young otter hovers just above the seafloor, where centuries of churning currents have tumbled and polished countless fragments of quartz and granite. Without relying solely on sight in the fading amber light, the otter puts its most sensitive tactile instruments to work, its long, white facial vibrissae. These whiskers are richly innervated with sensory receptors, capable of detecting the most subtle variations in surface texture, porosity, and mass. The juvenile rolls potential stones across the sand, sweeping its muzzle over each candidate. A smooth, rounded river stone is rejected as too slick to hold a slippery turban snail. An angular shard of flint is bypassed for edges too sharp that might puncture the otter's own fur or delicate skin. What the growing animal requires is an exact balance of physics. The stone must possess sufficient mass to absorb the forceful impact of heavy shells without shifting. Yet it cannot be so burdensome that it compromises the otter's buoyancy. It demands a flat face to rest steadily upon the chest and a comfortable heft for the paws. After discarding a few imperfect candidates, the young otter's whiskers linger over a dense, fine-grained pebble of optimal weight and slightly textured grain. With a decisive nudge of its nose, the ideal anvil is confirmed, ready to be gathered into the paws for another journey upward. With the prized pebble cradled securely against its chest, the young sea otter ascends to the sunlit surface, gliding effortlessly through the cool, emerald water. Among the drifting fronds of giant kelp, which weave a soft, golden canopy overhead, the juvenile performs a familiar, graceful roll. It settles flat upon its back, adopting the classic marine posture of rest and repose. The gentle ocean swells rise and fall in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, cradling the otter in a liquid hammock, while water laps softly against the buoyant ribbons of kelp. To transform the body into a stable workbench requires an intricate mastery of anatomy and physics. The juvenile adjusts its position, arching its back slightly and filling its capacious lungs with air. This intentional increase in thoracic volume acts as a natural life vest, utilizing the high buoyancy of mammalian lung capacity to maintain a steady horizontal plane at the water surface. Resting directly upon the broad, flat expanse of the sternum, the selected stone finds its permanent home. The rib cage, reinforced by broad ribs and a flat breastbone, provides a firm, resilient platform that absorbs the kinetic energy of future strikes without transmitting shock to the delicate internal organs below. As the juvenile breathes softly, inhaling and exhaling in deep, calming cycles, the chest rises and falls with rhythmic predictability. The pebble rests immovable in the very center of this living architecture, perfectly balanced by gravity and water tension, floating thus, suspended between the vast ocean depths and the amber sky. The young otter rests in absolute equilibrium, ready to engage in the ancient, rhythmic craft of its ancestors. Between nimble paws, a deeply ridged turban snail is brought into focus. The juvenile sea otter inspects the coiled armor with careful attention, turning the shell over and over to find its structural vulnerability. Bending its wrists inward, the young otter raises the prey aloft against the fading summer light, then brings it downward in a swift, calculated arc. Clink. The sound is sharp yet muffled by the water, a tiny pebble striking stone in the vast, quiet bay. Each rapid blow demands an exquisite level of neurological coordination. The motor cortex, working in tandem with highly sensitive vibrissae and nerve endings in the paw pads, calibrates the force of every impact with remarkable precision. Too soft, and the calcareous shell remains intact. Too hard, and the fragile bone beneath the fur might suffer. Months of patient practice and trial and error learning have honed this biomechanical skill into a fluid, rhythmic cadence. Clink, clink, clink. The striking motion becomes a steady metronome matching the slow breathing of the resting animal. The kinetic energy disperses safely across the reinforced sternum while the shell's structural integrity finally yields. With a gentle twist of the paws, The interior meat is exposed and extracted methodically. The juvenile pauses, savoring the rich harvest before letting the broken fragments drift away into the gentle swells. Soft breathing fills the cooling air as the young otter cleans its whiskers, basking in the quiet satisfaction of a well-earned meal. As the sun dips lower, painting the calm coastal waters in shades of amber and rose, the golden glow illuminates the resting juvenile. Long, peaceful shadows stretch across the gentle ocean swells. With the nourishing meal fully consumed, the young otter begins the meticulous process of grooming. Water laps softly against the drifting kelp fronds, blending with the subtle clinking of stones as the prized pebble is shifted and tucked securely back into the loose skin fold beneath the armpit, safely stored for another day. Each stroke of the paws through the dense fur removes any lingering food residue, restoring the insulating air layer essential for thermoregulation. This endless maintenance of the pelage is a vital daily ritual, keeping the skin completely dry beneath the thick, million hair per square inch canopy. Distant gull calls drift across the quiet bay, signaling the slow transition from the active afternoon foraging hours to the restful hush of twilight. The juvenile rolls gently onto its side, letting out a soft, contented exhale into the cooling air. Ahead, the other members of the local population are beginning to gather, loosely intertwining their bodies into a safe, anchored social raft among the canopy of giant kelp. Paddling slowly with unhurried grace, the young otter drifts toward the group, cradled by the forgiving sea, ready to settle into the tranquil embrace of the approaching night. As the summer sun dips toward the horizon, casting long amber reflections across the calm, sheltered cove, a subtle shift ripples through the coastal waters. Individual sea otters, scattered across the bay after a day of foraging, begin to pivot their sleek bodies toward a familiar, quiet corner. Driven by an ancient rhythm, they converge upon a vast canopy of floating giant kelp, its golden brown fronds anchored firmly to the rocky seabed below. This dense underwater forest acts as a natural mooring, offering a tranquil sanctuary away from the stronger ocean currents. Here, the evening raft begins to form. The juvenile otter paddles purposefully through the cooling water, whiskers twitching as low-frequency contact calls, soft, melodic coos, echo gently across the glass-like surface, guiding the young animal toward the gathering group. In the gentle wind, the rustling leaves of the overhanging shoreline trees mingle with the distant, steady murmur of a flowing stream emptying into the cove. Slipping quietly into the swelling assembly, the juvenile finds a secure, cushioned niche amongst the tangled kelp stems. Sea otters possess the densest fur in the animal kingdom, with up to 1 million hairs per square inch, completely lacking the blubber that protects other marine mammals. Because maintaining this miraculous million-hair coat is vital for trapping an insulating layer of air and ensuring lifelong survival, gathering together in close proximity is the first step toward nightly thermal defense. Settling among the adults, the juvenile slows its energetic pace, matching the steady, rising and falling cadence of the resting community as twilight gently embraces the coast. Within the undulating emerald cradle of the kelp canopy, the serious work of evening restoration begins. While solitary preening occupies much of the day, certain regions of a sea otter's sleek anatomy remain stubbornly out of reach. The broad expanse of the shoulders and the center of the back are impossible zones for an individual to service alone, making cooperative care an essential pillar of raft survival. Pairs drift together, rolling in a slow, synchronized dance upon the water's surface. An experienced adult positions itself beside the juvenile, and with delicate, nibbling motions of its incisors, begins to comb through the dense underfur. This gentle nipping and massaging action serves a vital biological purpose. It meticulously clears away microscopic debris, loose skin flakes, and stray bits of marine algae that might compromise the coat's structural integrity. More importantly, this rhythmic grooming fluffs and aerates the underfur, restoring the microscopic pockets that trap a life-saving layer of insulating air against the skin. Without this constant maintenance, water would penetrate to the skin, causing rapid hypothermia in the cool Pacific currents. The juvenile closes its eyes, surrendering to the soothing friction of the caretaker's paws. Low, contented chitters pass between them, vibrating softly through the damp evening air. The tactile connection deepens social bonds within the raft, reinforcing a quiet hierarchy of mutual trust and reliance. As the last rays of amber light fade from the water, the companions gently untwist from their embrace, their coats gleaming with renewed vitality, completely sealed against the chill of the coming night. As the evening breeze whispers through the rustling leaves of the overhanging shoreline trees, a new challenge faces the resting assembly. The gentle current of the flowing stream where it meets the marine cove threatens to scatter the resting family across the open bay. To counter this nocturnal drift, the raft executes a brilliant behavioral adaptation, transforming from a loose gathering into an interconnected floating mosaic. The juvenile watches as the larger otters gently extend their forepaws toward one another, forging a physical link that defies the moving tide. With remarkable dexterity, they interlock their fingers, creating a living anchor line of soft fur and muscle. For added security, some members wrap long, pliable strands of giant kelp loosely around their torsos, tethering themselves securely to the submarine forest below. Drifting closer to the center of the cluster, the juvenile extends its own small paw. A neighboring adult accepts the connection, clasping the young otter's wrist in a firm yet tender grip. This simple touch does far more than prevent separation. It is a profound biological lifeline. By anchoring together, the otters conserve valuable metabolic energy that would otherwise be wasted swimming against the current. The shared body heat from this close physical contact radiates through the water, creating a warm microclimate in the center of the raft. Resting securely hand in hand, the juvenile feels the rhythmic, comforting pulse of the group. Every gentle sway of the ocean wave carries a silent reassurance. In this floating communion, cradled by the calm waters of the sheltered cove, the collective bond deepens, shielding every member from the vast, cool unknown of the gathering night. Across the glassy surface of the sheltered bay, a quiet conversation unfolds as the evening deepens. Low-frequency coos, soft whimpers, and gentle grunts pass softly between resting individuals, creating a soothing auditory landscape that drifts across the water. These subtle vocalizations serve as the acoustic glue of the raft, reinforcing social bonds without disturbing the tranquil peace of twilight. Sea otters possess a remarkably rich vocal repertoire, utilizing sound to convey emotional states, maintain contact in murky water, and coordinate group movements. A mother emits high-pitched coos to reassure her pup, while deeper, rumbling grunts signal contentment within the resting cluster. As the juvenile listens closely, it learns the nuanced cadence of these exchanges. Each low-frequency note carries just a short distance across the calm surface, ensuring privacy from distant predators while keeping the immediate family intimately connected. In response to a low, soothing grunt from the adjacent adult, the juvenile releases a soft, contented whistle. This auditory back and forth anchors the social hierarchy of the raft, establishing peaceful coexistence and mutual trust as the light fades. The gentle breeze rustling through the nearby shoreline vegetation blends harmoniously with these organic murmurs, masking the boundary between land and sea. Floating motionless in the cool Pacific current, surrounded by this chorus of gentle breath and low coos, the young otter feels completely enveloped by the community. The melodic whispers rise and fall in rhythm with the gentle swell, wrapping the entire raft in a secure, vocal blanket of sound that whispers the day to a peaceful close. As twilight yields to the gathering dusk, the raft contracts into a tightly bound cluster, transforming individual otters into a single, cohesive unit of survival. This close physical embrace is far more than a comforting social gesture. It is a vital strategy for heat conservation in the cool Pacific waters. Because sea otters lack the thick blubber layer of whales or seals, they rely entirely upon their million hairs per square inch fur coat and a remarkably high metabolic rate to maintain their core body temperature. By huddling tightly together, the otters dramatically reduce their individual surface area exposed to the chilling air and water, minimizing conductive heat loss. Within this living quilt of fur and warmth, metabolic energy is expertly preserved. The juvenile presses its chest against the broad back of an adult, absorbing the steady radiant heat generated by the older animal's internal furnace. In return, the juvenile contributes its own youthful warmth to the collective pool. This physiological phenomenon of social thermoregulation proves especially crucial during summer evenings when ocean temperatures drop and resting metabolic demands remain elevated. Slowly, the rhythmic motion of the resting raft synchronizes. Inhales and exhales harmonize with the gentle movement of the sheltered cove, creating a steady, calming cadence that pulses through the group. The gentle breeze rustling the shoreline leaves begins to quiet, leaving only the soft lapping of water against dense fur. Sheltered by the collective mass of the raft, the juvenile's eyelids grow heavy. Protected from the chill by the warmth of its companions, the young otter drifts deeply into sleep, wrapped safely within the thermal embrace of the community. The movements within the raft slow as synchronized breathing takes over the group. Each gentle rise and fall of the water becomes a shared pulse, uniting the resting otters in a quiet, collective rhythm. The juvenile drifts peacefully in the center, cradled by both the buoyant, emerald strands of giant kelp and the protective, steady presence of the raft. Every tiny ripple from the evening breeze is absorbed by the floating canopy of kelp forest around them, creating an oasis of stillness inside the sheltered cove. The soft rustling of leaves along the darkening shoreline fades into a quiet whisper, blending with the gentle flow of the stream emptying nearby. There is no need for movement now. No need for the intricate dance of grooming or the low-frequency coos of communication. The social hierarchy of the day dissolves into a profound, egalitarian peace. Surrounded by family, the young otter lets go of the last remnants of daytime alertness. Its muscles relax completely, trusting entirely in the buoyancy of the salt water and the secure tangle of paws that prevents anyone from drifting away into the dark. In this deep stillness, the boundary between individual and community blurs entirely. The raft rests as one living organism, breathing softly beneath the summer stars, held safe within the cradle of the quiet sea. The sun slips silently beneath the jagged western horizon, washing the open coastal bay in deep, velvety shades of indigo and slate. As twilight surrenders to the quiet majesty of a midsummer night, the surface of the Pacific softens into a smooth, dark mirror. The frantic energy of the daytime tide fades away, replaced by the slow, predictable rhythm of gentle ocean swells rolling in from the deep ocean. Near the center of the bay, the giant kelp canopy creates a dense, protective sanctuary upon the water. Within these branching fronds of Macrocystis porifera, a collective raft of sea otters gathers together, anchoring themselves against the drifting currents. Among them is a growing juvenile, whose day of playful diving and active foraging has finally given way to heavy eyelids. Needing physical security to prevent drifting out to sea while unconscious, the young otter initiates a remarkable nocturnal ritual. It rolls gracefully onto its back, bringing its dense, insulating fur into contact with the cool air. Reaching out with delicate paws, the juvenile loops several flexible strands of golden brown kelp securely across its chest, creating a natural anchor. This tethering behavior is essential. Without it, resting otters might drift miles away from their familiar feeding grounds by morning. Enveloped in the comforting embrace of the kelp blanket, the juvenile lets out a soft, muffled sigh of contentment. The surrounding water laps quietly against the resting bodies of the raft, blending with the rustling of kelp fronds in the gentle breeze. Safe, anchored, and deeply warm, the young otter surrenders completely to the stillness of the summer night. Beneath the calm expanse of the summer sea, an invisible world stirs into quiet brilliance. Disturbed by the gentle drift of the resting otters, trillions of microscopic single-celled organisms known as dinoflagellates begin to react. These tiny marine plankton possess a remarkable biochemical capability, bioluminescence. When mechanical pressure nudges their cell walls, a rapid enzyme-catalyzed reaction occurs within luciferin molecules, releasing energy not as heat, but as a cold, mesmerizing blue-green light. As the juvenile sea otter shifts slightly in its sleep, seeking an even more comfortable position among the floating fronds, its movements send subtle ripples through the dark water. Instantly, the disturbed dinoflagellates flare to life, tracing glowing outlines along the contours of the young otter's streamlined body. A cascade of shimmering starlight ripples outward from its webbed hind feet, painting luminous pathways across the surface. This ethereal glow catches on the tips of the animal's ultra-dense guard hairs, outlining its resting form in an aura of celestial luminescence. Every lazy twitch of a paw and every gentle roll of the ocean swell stirs another constellation into brief existence beneath the raft. The glowing liquid light laps softly against fur and kelp alike, creating a dreamlike theater of shadow and illumination. Within this glowing cradle, the sleeping juvenile remains entirely unaware of the luminous show it inspires, lulled deeper into its nocturnal rest by the cool, comforting embrace of the midnight tide. All around the juvenile, the dark water cradles a vast, breathing community. Dozens of sea otters have gathered into a sprawling, interconnected cluster known as a raft, their bodies floating entirely supine upon the gentle swells of the summer bay. To prevent themselves from drifting apart or being swept out toward the open ocean by nocturnal tides, the animals utilize a clever communal strategy. Some wrap themselves tightly in the sturdy, leathery fronds of the giant kelp canopy, creating a natural anchor. Others reach out, lightly holding paws with their neighbors in a continuous chain of quiet solidarity. Drifting safely near the warm, protected center of this floating assembly, the young otter rests deeply. This social positioning provides a profound evolutionary advantage. Surrounded on all sides by companions, the juvenile is heavily insulated from the chill of the midnight water and shielded from the curious glances of passing marine predators. Sea otters lack the thick layer of blubber that protects whales and seals from the cold, relying instead on their exceptionally dense fur, the densest of any mammal on Earth, and a very high metabolic rate. Yet tonight, resting within the heart of the raft, the juvenile benefits from an added layer of warmth. The collective body heat of the gathered otters creates a microclimate just above the water's surface, a pocket of stillness where the air is soft and humid. With every slow, synchronized rise and fall of the ocean swell, the raft shifts as a single, harmonious organism. Paws remain lightly linked, kelp stems rustle like dry paper in a summer breeze, and the soft, rhythmic breathing of 100 resting lives blends into a steady, lulling lullaby that echoes softly across the dark bay. Floating securely on its back, the juvenile enters the deepest phase of nocturnal rest, supported entirely by an ingenious biological design. Lacking the heavy blubber of other marine mammals, the young otter relies on a miraculous 2-layered coat containing nearly 1 million hairs per square inch. This ultra-dense fur traps a vital insulating layer of air against the skin, sealing out the cool summer water entirely and preventing any loss of precious core body heat. As the night deepens, The otter's metabolism slows just enough to conserve energy, while the trapped air maintains a buoyant, feather-light lift that keeps the resting body effortlessly at the surface. Even in profound slumber, the juvenile's nervous system remains softly vigilant. Its long, sensitive facial vibrissae, the prominent whiskers arching above its muzzle, trail delicately in the water and air. These specialized sensory hairs detect the faintest hydrodynamic vibrations, translating the silent ripples of a passing current or the gentle movement of a neighbor into immediate, subconscious awareness. With every rhythmic breath, the chest rises and falls beneath the plush, silver-tipped fur. The low-frequency wash of the ocean swells rocks the floating body in a slow, hypnotic cadence, perfectly harmonizing with the resting pulse of the nocturnal bay. Out beyond the rocky breakwater, the deep ocean swells maintain their ancient, unhurried march toward the shore. Rolling in from the open Pacific, these long-period waves arrive with a steady, predictable cadence, carrying the quiet breath of the greater sea. As they pass beneath the coastal shelf and enter the sheltered bay, their formidable power gentles into a soft, undulating swell. This rhythmic pulse of the water reaches the kelp forest like a slow, deep sigh. The golden brown stapes and broad blades of the giant kelp sway in unison, bowing forward and drifting back in a continuous, mesmerizing dance. With every gentle advance and retreat of the tide, the resting raft of otters moves as one cohesive entity, rising and falling together on the liquid bosom of the bay. The acoustic environment of the midnight water is a tapestry of pure serenity. There is the low, muffled hush of ocean water brushing against floating stems, the occasional muted rustle of leathery kelp fronds sliding silently past dense fur, and, beneath it all, the gentle chorus of soft, rhythmic breathing. Dozens of resting animals inhale and exhale in a tranquil symphony, their synchronized respiration blending seamlessly with the low-frequency wash of the sea. Farther out in the dark expanse, a distant seabird calls out once, a low, melodic note that vanishes instantly into the heavy night air. The water laps softly against sensitive paws curled close to warm chests. In this cradling expanse of cool Pacific water, time seems to stretch and dissolve, held safely within the soothing, timeless rhythm of the slumbering coast. High above the quiet waters, the brilliant constellations of the midsummer sky begin their imperceptible westward drift. The glowing constellations cast a faint, silver sheen over the surface of the bay, where the brilliant pinpricks of bioluminescent plankton slowly fade into a soft, resting dark. The water grows stiller now, settling into the profound quiet of the hours just before the dawn. Deep within the amber cradle of the floating canopy, the juvenile sea otter rests in absolute peace. Suspended in water that is cooler than its own core temperature, the young mammal relies entirely on the remarkable insulating power of its dense fur, the densest of any animal on Earth, to trap a warming layer of air against its skin. Without a thick layer of blubber, this constant entrapment of body heat is essential, allowing the juvenile to drift and dream without losing precious energy to the chill of the Pacific. Anchored securely by sturdy fronds wrapped twice around its waist, the youngster floats effortlessly, completely untethered from the waking world. Even in this deepest stage of sleep, sensory awareness remains finely tuned. Sensitive vibrissae on the muzzle twitch ever so slightly at the faintest shift in the current, ensuring total safety without ever interrupting the restorative rest. The rhythmic ocean swells grow softer still, their gentle cadence smoothing into a glass-like calm across the open bay. The soft, muffled breathing of the raft blends into the quiet hush of the coming morning. Cradled by the sea and wrapped in the embrace of the kelp, the juvenile sleeps on, resting safely in the still heart of the night. A brisk autumn wind sweeps down from the northern Pacific, carrying the quiet scent of changing weather across the rocky shoreline. Along the exposed headlands, the summer fog lingers heavy and gray, refusing to lift as the pale light of dawn begins to touch the horizon. With this seasonal shift, the coastal waters undergo a subtle transformation. Upwelling patterns alter, drawing nutrient-rich currents up from the deep ocean floor and slightly cooling the surface temperatures of the nearshore marine habitat. Nature responds to these biological cues with a hushed, steady rhythm. The restless summer energy fades, replaced by the deep, deliberate preparations required for the colder months ahead. This transition in water temperature and coastal wind sets the stage for a critical turning point in the ecosystem. Every kelp frond and rocky crevice feels the gentle touch of autumn, marking the slow winding down of the year and the beginning of a resilient new chapter for the inhabitants of the kelp beds. Beyond the shifting currents, a lone figure carves a sleek, purposeful path through the water. This subadult sea otter no longer looks to a mother for guidance, having stepped fully into a life of self-reliance along the outer edges of the towering kelp beds. Every movement through the rolling swells demonstrates a growing confidence. The young otter rolls with the ocean swells, utilizing the buoyant golden fronds of giant kelp to anchor its slender body against the brisk morning breeze. Patrolling this newly claimed stretch of shoreline requires constant, quiet vigilance. The subadult dips below the surface with effortless grace, its streamlined silhouette gliding smoothly past swaying stalks of macroalgae. Without maternal protection, survival depends entirely on personal skill and stamina. The dense, insulating coat, once maintained and cleaned by a mother's tireless efforts, is now meticulously tended by the young otter alone, ensuring the microscopic air bubbles trapped within the fur continue to provide essential warmth against the chilling autumn water. Floating amidst the amber canopy, the otter pauses to groom, rubbing its paws over its chest and flanks in a slow, rhythmic sequence. It surveys the rocky headland with steady, alert eyes, acknowledging the silent boundaries of its home range. Here, away from the protective nursery groups, the subadult settles comfortably among the rustling kelp leaves, completely at home in the vast and changing sea. Beneath the golden canopy of the giant kelp forest, the ecological significance of this solitary hunter extends far beyond its own daily survival. Scientists recognize the sea otter as a classic keystone species, an organism that exerts a disproportionately large effect on its environment relative to its population size. Without the presence of these sleek predators, the delicate balance of the nearshore marine ecosystem would quietly unravel. Down in the dim, cool shadows of the rocky benthic zone, dense colonies of purple and red sea urchins graze along the ocean floor. Left unchecked, these spiny herbivores consume the tough, anchoring holdfasts that tether the towering macroalgae to the bedrock. When a holdfast is severed, the entire kelp plant drifts away and dies, transforming a lush, vibrant underwater forest into an empty, barren wasteland devoid of shelter for countless other marine species. By actively foraging and consuming large quantities of these herbivorous invertebrates, the subadult otter plays a vital, stabilizing role in this intricate trophic cascade. Each dive to the rocky bottom helps keep the urchin populations in check, preventing overgrazing and allowing the golden forest to thrive upward toward the sunlight. This natural predation preserves a complex habitat that shelters myriad fish, invertebrates, and seabirds along the coast. Resting quietly among the floating fronds, the young otter remains unaware of its grand ecological influence. It simply responds to the ancient rhythms of the sea, drifting gently in the cool autumn breeze while quietly maintaining the health of the coastal world it now calls home. Beneath the surface, the water is cool and clear, stirred by the changing currents of the new season. The subadult rolls gracefully, exhaling a trailing ribbon of bubbles before angling its sleek body downward. It kicks its broad hind flippers with effortless ease, descending through the swaying columns of amber kelp toward the rugged benthic realm below. Down among the shadowed stones and crevices, the young hunter slows its momentum. It glides close to the rocky substrate, pressing its muzzle against the contours of the reef. Highly sensitive facial vibrancy, its stiff, long whiskers sweep across the rough stone, detecting the subtle vibrations and textures of hidden life. These specialized hairs act as underwater antennae in the dim light, guiding the otter precisely where its eyes cannot fully see. With a gentle nudge of its paw, the otter locates its target. It reaches deep into a narrow crevice where a cluster of spiny sea urchins clings tightly to the rock. Using strong, dexterous paws, the subadult expertly pries the defensive invertebrates free from their hold. It gathers several of the purple urchins, tucking them securely into the loose folds of skin beneath its forelegs, nature's built-in pockets designed for efficient transport. Its lungs full, the otter curves its spine and kicks upward. It rises smoothly through the towering underwater forest, ascending back toward the golden light filtering through the surface canopy. Reaching the top, it breaks the water with a gentle splash, clutching its prize tightly against its chest, ready to partake in the quiet, restorative rhythm of the coastal morning. Floating on its back amidst the golden canopy of autumn kelp, the subadult settles into the rhythmic grace of its morning grooming routine. As the brisk morning air brushes across the water, the young otter begins the essential task of maintaining its supreme insulation. Unlike marine mammals that rely on blubber for warmth, sea otters depend entirely upon the densest fur in the animal kingdom, boasting up to 1 million hairs per square inch. Methodically, the otter works from its wet head down to the tip of its tail. Using its nimble paws and sharp teeth, it twists, kneads, and combs through the plush layers. This rigorous motion fluffs the fine underfur, trapping thousands of microscopic air bubbles directly against the skin. This invisible thermal barrier forms a dry, protective suit that keeps the icy autumn ocean from ever touching the otter's skin. With each gentle sweep of its paws, water drips from the outer guard hairs, pattering softly onto the calm swells. The air bubbles woven into the coat give the resting animal a buoyant, pillow-like lift, allowing it to drift effortlessly alongside the rustling kelp fronds. Every stroke is deliberate and calming, a quiet meditation in the rising light. As the last damp patch of underfur is fluffed into a velvety warmth, the young otter lets out a soft, contented exhale, perfectly sealed against the cooling breath of the changing season. With grooming complete, the subadult prepares for a period of stillness. Reaching out with sensitive forepaws, it gathers several long, leathery strands of giant kelp, gently winding the amber ribbons across its chest. This instinctive anchoring behavior prevents the rising autumn currents and surface breezes from drifting the resting animal away from its familiar foraging grounds. Securely tethered within the floating canopy, the otter rolls onto its back and lets its limbs relax completely. The buoyant embrace of the water supports its weight, while the kelp cradle holds it steady against the gentle cadence of lapping ocean swells. As the morning light climbs higher over the exposed headlands, casting long golden shadows across the rocky shore, the young otter closes its eyes. Drifting peacefully, the animal enters a state of quiet conservation. Resting occupies a significant portion of a sea otter's daily routine, vital for recovering the immense metabolic energy required to maintain a warm core body temperature in cold coastal waters. Every quiet, rhythmic breath matches the slow pulse of the Pacific, perfectly tuned to the changing rhythms of the season. Farther out along the coastal channels, deeper waters await the afternoon's exploration, but for now, the sheltered kelp bed offers a sanctuary of absolute calm. Water drips softly from the tips of resting guard hairs into the sea below, blending with the distant calls of seabirds wheeling through the crisp air. The subadult floats motionless, suspended between the rolling ocean depths and the quiet dawn sky, resting deeply in the heart of its newly claimed home. The sheltered shallows of the bay, once a reliable nursery of protected waters and gentle seagrass beds, now hold fewer secrets for the growing subadult sea otter. As the crisp air of late autumn settles over the coastline, the surface of the sea catches the amber glow of the descending afternoon sun. Driven by an unrelenting internal clock and a rapidly growing frame, the young otter lifts its sleek head above the surface, dark eyes scanning the open water beyond the kelp canopy. A low breeze ripples across the bay, carrying the distant, melancholic calls of gulls wheeling above the headlands. Beneath the surface, the water is cooling rapidly, signaling a shift in seasonal abundance. To sustain a blistering metabolic rate, one that requires consuming up to 25% of its body weight in food every single day, the subadult can no longer rely on the small crabs and shallow water snails of its youth. It needs massive, calorie-dense sustenance. With a powerful sweep of its hind flippers and a fluid twist of its lower torso, the otter leaves the familiar shallows behind. It paddles purposefully outward, navigating the gentle, rhythmic swells rolling in from the open ocean. Ahead lie the deeper subtidal rocky reefs, hidden domains where swift currents sweep rich nutrients from the deep sea. Giant kelp fronds swish softly against one another in the gathering currents, creating an underwater forest of shadows and promise. This territorial expansion is a crucial milestone in the subadult's journey toward full independence. The deeper channels hold heavy-shelled clams and large red sea urchins tucked deep within rocky crevices. As the coastline fades into a quiet, golden haze, the young explorer prepares to descend into the cold abyss, entering a new realm of survival where strength, skill, and physiology will be tested against the demanding chill of the autumn sea. Suspended just beneath the surface in the cool, sapphire depths, the subadult's body tells a silent, relentless story of biological endurance. Unlike whales or seals, the sea otter possesses no thick layer of insulating blubber to shield its slender frame from the biting chill of the autumn ocean. Instead, survival depends on an astonishingly high metabolic rate, burning energy at a furnace-like intensity just to maintain a normal core body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius in water that steals heat 25 times faster than air. To fuel this internal fire, every waking hour is bound to the mathematics of caloric necessity. The young otter must capture and consume up to 25% of its entire body weight in food every single day. Every clam, urchin, and snail is not merely a meal, but a vital unit of thermal energy. Without this continuous intake, the relentless cold would rapidly overwhelm the animal's slender reserves. Drifting silently in the dimming underwater light, the subadult pauses near a rocky ledge. The surrounding water laps softly against the stone, a gentle reminder of the vast, chilly expanse above. Every breath held in its lungs is measured, every heartbeat optimized for the demanding hunt ahead. It is a fragile-seeming existence, balancing on the absolute edge of physiological limits, yet sustained by the remarkable design of nature. The young otter prepares its paws, ready to translate the cold depths into the warmth of life. With a single sweep of its powerful hind flippers and a gentle wave of its flattened tail, the subadult pivots downward, initiating a smooth, vertical descent into the deepening sapphire channels. The gentle ocean swells above begin to fade into a quiet, rhythmic pulse, replaced by the hushed stillness of the subtidal zone. As the otter glides toward the rocky seafloor, hydrostatic pressure increases, but its flexible spine and streamlined form negotiate the water with effortless grace. Reaching the benthic realm 15 meters below, the young otter moves among towering pillars of giant kelp, whose long, golden fronds sway softly in the underwater current with a soothing swishing sound. This rocky labyrinth is a rich feeding ground, home to dense colonies of heavy-shelled clams and large red sea urchins anchored firmly to the stone. To navigate the dim, shadow-dappled crevices where preferred prey hide, the otter relies heavily on its stiff facial vibrancy. These ultra-sensitive whiskers sweep back and forth across the dark surfaces, detecting the faintest hydrodynamic disturbances and textural shifts in the silt. The whiskers function like high-precision fingertips, immediately locking onto the calcified spines of a massive red sea urchin wedged deep within a granite fissure. With practiced dexterity, the subadult reaches out with nimble forepaws, applying calculated leverage to pry the heavy invertebrate free from the rock. The deep benthic dive requires precise breath hold management, yet the otter remains composed, moving with a tranquil, deliberate rhythm as it secures its prize before beginning the unhurried ascent back toward the sunlit surface. With the heavy red sea urchin finally unmoored from its granite anchor, the subadult secures the spiky prize tightly against its chest, tucking it beneath a fold of loose skin under its foreleg. The ascent begins in a slow, upward spiral. Because marine mammals lack the thick blubber layer found in whales and seals, sea otters rely entirely on their hypermetabolic rate and an insulated double coat of fur to generate internal heat. This furnace-like metabolism demands constant refueling, making every captured calorie essential for survival in the chill of late autumn. As the otter kicks gently upward, the dim blue shadows gradually brighten into a warm, golden radiance. Water pressure releases its quiet hold, and the rhythmic sound of gentle ocean swells grows louder once again, breaking through the surface tension with a soft, splashing ripple. The young animal rests its back against the buoyant water, exhaling a long, contented breath into the cool autumn air. The distant, lazy calls of gulls echo across the tranquil bay as a low breeze skims over the gentle waves. Floating effortlessly, the subadult shifts the spiky urchin into position, cradling its heavy meal on its chest while the afternoon light paints the coastal waters in amber hues. Floating comfortably on its back, the subadult uses its chest as a sturdy anvil, expertly tapping the hard shell of its harvest against a favorite flat stone tucked into its fur. Without the thermal protection of blubber, sea otters must consume up to a quarter of their body weight daily just to fuel their furnace-like metabolism. This constant demand requires absolute precision during every meal. With a deft twist of its paws, the shell gives way, and the nutrient-rich bounty is slowly consumed beneath the warm, amber light of the late afternoon sun. Once the meal is finished, the young otter wastes no time before beginning the essential ritual of grooming. Because its survival depends entirely on maintaining the microscopic air pockets trapped within its dense underfur, every square inch must be vigorously cleaned and fluffed. Using its teeth and agile paws, the subadult works through the plush layers in rhythmic, soothing motions, massaging trapped air back into the coat until it forms a shimmering, silvery dry barrier against the chilly ocean water. Water splashing softly around its resting form blends with the gentle, rhythmic motion of ocean swells. The low breeze carries the faint, distant calls of gulls wheeling across the calm bay, signaling the quiet approach of evening. Completely waterproofed once more, the subadult sighs softly, letting its tired muscles relax completely into the buoyant, sunlit water. It drifts peacefully, cradled by the sea, surrendering gently to the peaceful stillness of the approaching twilight, bathed in the warm, horizontal light of late afternoon. The otter rests serenely amidst floating kelp fragments, completely at peace after hours of relentless foraging. The deep subtidal channels now lie quiet beneath the surface, their rocky crevices shadowed as the sun dips lower toward the western horizon. Drifting slowly within a quiet maritime cradle, the subadult lets its eyes drift closed. Its high metabolic rate, which demands such staggering amounts of energy throughout the day, finally shifts into a state of quiet equilibrium as digestion warms its core from within, without a layer of insulating blubber, relying entirely on that furnace-like metabolism and the brilliant waterproofing of its freshly groomed coat. The young otter floats effortlessly upon the surface swells. Gentle ocean swells lift and lower the resting animal in a steady, hypnotic rhythm. The water splashes softly against its buoyant flanks, a soothing cadence blending with the low, steady breeze whispering through the fronds of the canopy overhead. In the distance, faint gull calls drift across the cooling air, marking the slow transition from day to evening along the rugged coast. Every muscle relaxes completely, surrendering the day's exertion to the gentle embrace of the sea, safe within the shelter of the subtidal reefs, wrapped in warmth and stillness. The subadult breathes deeply, drifting softly into the quiet harbor of sleep as twilight settles over the water. A profound quiet settles over the outer rocky coastline as the season turns. High above the rugged cliffs, an invisible atmospheric tide shifts. Cool, heavy northern fronts descend to meet the lingering warmth of the coastal waters, creating a subtle yet unmistakable change in the air. This atmospheric transition brings a sharp drop in barometric pressure, a physical sensation that gently presses against the sensitive whiskers and inner ears of a resting subadult sea otter. Floating near the outer boundaries of the bay, the young marine mustelid pauses its grooming. With a dense underfur numbering up to 1,000,000 hairs per square inch, an anatomical marvel designed to trap insulating air against the skin, the otter is exquisitely sensitive to the environment. It feels the sudden dip in pressure not merely as weather, but as a profound signal from the open ocean. Farther out, the color of the sea begins to transform. The familiar deep blue-green of the afternoon yields to a bruised, slate-gray expanse. Long period swells, generated by distant low-pressure systems churning hundreds of miles away, begin to march steadily toward the shore. These rolling waves carry immense kinetic energy, bending and refracting as they approach the shallows. The wind whispers through the coastal air, carrying the faint, distant rumble of ocean thunder and the sharp scent of ozone. The water beneath the otter begins to heave with a slow, rhythmic respiration, lifting and lowering the young animal with each passing swell. Though the outer bay remains open to the elements for now, the subtle bracing of muscles reveals an instinctive readiness. The autumn storm is coming, and the coast prepares to test the resilience of its inhabitants. Deep water waves build in strength, rolling toward the rocky headlands and outer bays. The deep, rolling wave swells grow taller and steeper, their crests tipped with white foam that catches the fading amber light of the late afternoon sky. Each approaching wall of water carries the heavy momentum of distant storms, reshaping the nearshore marine environment into a dynamic and powerful arena. The subadult sea otter must now swim with increased vigilance, its webbed hind paws and flattened tail working in steady harmony to maintain positioning against the heavier, surging currents. As the water pulses with formidable energy, the otter's muscular frame flexes with every stroke. Navigating these rising forces requires a delicate balance of strength and hydrodynamic grace. The physical demands on the marine mustelid intensify, testing the endurance of a young body still growing into its full adult capacity. Around the swimming otter, the surface of the bay heaves rhythmically, accompanied by the splashing spray of cresting wavelets and the soft, bubbling water of displaced foam. The vast kinetic power of the open ocean presses inward, demanding absolute focus. Yet, even amidst the escalating motion, the otter's dense, water-repellent guard hairs shed the stinging spray effortlessly, keeping the crucial insulating underlayer completely dry and warm against the rising chill. With every stroke pushing forward, the shoreline environment shifts from a place of gentle rest into a theater of motion. The approaching boundary of the giant kelp forest looms ahead like a welcoming fortress, offering the promise of tranquility just beyond the reach of the unyielding, deepening tides. Ahead lies the grand sanctuary of the giant kelp forest, Macrocystis perifera, functioning as a living architectural wonder along the rugged coast. Diving beneath the churning surface, the subadult enters a submarine meadow of towering gold-brown stipes. This dense underwater canopy operates as a sophisticated natural breakwater. Each individual kelp plant is an engineering marvel of flexibility and strength. Hollow gas-filled bulbs called pneumatocysts keep the upper fronds floating near the light, while incredibly elastic stipes stretch and bend in unison with the passing water. As the deep rolling wave swells press toward the shore, they encounter this thick, vertical labyrinth. The kinetic energy driving the open ocean water is met by millions of swaying fronds, which absorb and disperse the force of the surge. What was a turbulent, chaotic push of open water current softens into a gentle, rhythmic swaying motion within the forest interior. The subadult glides effortlessly through this submerged haven, feeling the water transition from a hostile wall of momentum to a slow, cradling current. The rushing wind through kelp fronds above creates a muted, rustling hush, muffling the roar of the tempest overhead. Here, protected by the structural resilience of the macroalgae biome, the kinetic pressure drops dramatically. The otter finds a zone of profound hydrodynamic relief, suspended safely within the emerald amber shadows of the sheltering kelp. Suspended within the emerald amber shadows, the subadult prepares for the long evening ahead by employing an ancient, instinctive survival art. To prevent the surging currents from carrying its resting body away into the open bay, the young marine mustelid reaches out with nimble paws and gathers several thick, sturdy macrocystis fronds. With quiet dexterity, the otter loops and weaves the golden brown macroalgae securely around its torso. This natural anchoring technique wraps the animal in a living quilt of vegetation. The elastic stipes act as biological tethers, fastening the subadult to the massive subterranean holdfast, anchored firmly to the rocky reef far below. Surrounded by soft, bubbling water, the otter rolls gently to tighten the leafy embrace. Each twist of the kelp distributes the tension evenly across the animal's buoyant, dense fur, a coat containing up to 1 million hairs per square inch, trapping a vital layer of insulating air. As the surface currents tug persistently at the upper canopy, the woven harness holds the resting otter precisely in place, neutralizing the pull of the tide. The animal tucks its sensitive paws against its chest, closing its eyes as the rhythmic sway of the kelp forest rocks it in a slow, soothing cradle. Protected by the ingenious engineering of the macroalgae and its own remarkable physiological design, the subadult floats securely in the heart of the storm-tossed sea. Above this sheltered pocket, the surface of the bay churns with foaming white water. Yet down in the subsurface calm, the water moves in a gentle, rhythmic pulse. The subadult rides these muted oscillations with effortless grace, its body relaxed and yielding to the water's sway. Surviving such dramatic atmospheric shifts requires an extraordinary physiological design. Without a thick layer of blubber like other marine mammals, the sea otter relies entirely on its dense fur and an exceptionally high metabolic rate to generate internal warmth. The trapped air within its million hairs per square inch acts as a dry thermal barrier against the chilly autumn ocean, keeping the skin completely dry. Even when resting through hours of turbulent weather, the otter's internal furnace burns efficiently, fueled by the rich meals it consumed earlier in the day. This rapid metabolism requires a continuous supply of energy, yet for now, physical exertion gives way to deep, restorative repose. As twilight deepens the emerald amber hues of the kelp forest into soft charcoal, the distant ocean thunder softens to a low, rhythmic vibration. The rushing wind through the surface fronds becomes a mere whisper far above. Securely anchored by the flexible stipes, the young mustelid drifts deeper into slumber. Its chest rises and falls in slow, measured breaths against the woven green blanket, cradled safely within the wild, beautiful resilience of the coastal sea. Through narrow tiers in the heavy, slate-gray storm clouds, the failing sun finally dips below the jagged horizon, casting a bruised violet light across the outer bay. The autumn sky burns with muted embers of orange and deep rose, signaling the slow retreat of the afternoon gale. As the barometric pressure stabilizes, the towering ocean swells begin to lose their fierce momentum, flattening into long, rolling undulations that slide harmlessly beneath the golden brown canopy. The subadult remains securely wrapped within the elastic fronds of Macrocystis perifera, its body moving in gentle synchrony with the receding tide. The cooling waters of the bay continue their rhythmic breathing, washing softly over the dense underfur that still holds its vital layer of insulating air. With the immediate tempest passing, the young marine mammal relaxes its grip slightly, though it maintains its natural anchoring habit out of instinct. On the surface, the chaotic splashing spray fades into a quiet, misting drizzle. The acoustic landscape of the kelp forest transforms entirely. The roaring chaos of the weather yields to a profound, liquid stillness, punctuated only by the soft bubbling of water against fur and the distant, fading rumble of ocean thunder far out past the reef. Drifting into the peaceful dusk, the otter's eyelids grow heavy. The evolutionary marvel of its high metabolic rate continues to radiate gentle warmth from within, shielding the resting body from the autumn chill. Cradled safely in the heart of the marine forest, the young sea otter surrenders to sleep, embraced by the quiet resilience of the sheltering sea. The autumn gale exhales its final, weary breath across the Pacific coast, leaving behind a profound and restorative stillness. Where angry whitecaps and churning foam recently dominated the bay, the ocean surface now relaxes into long, undulating swells. Heavy slate-gray clouds begin to fracture, parting to reveal a luminous expanse of pale amber twilight that stretches low across the horizon. Deep within the amber sanctuary of the giant kelp canopy, the subadult sea otter pauses. The thick strands of Macrocystis act as a natural breakwater, catching the residual momentum of the storm and transforming it into a gentle, rhythmic swaying. Floating effortlessly on its back, the young otter surveys the newly calmed waters, its dark, expressive eyes reflecting the soft evening light. With a slow, deliberate tilt of its head, the otter raises its muzzle above the waterline. It gives a gentle shake, sending a cascade of lingering water droplets flying from its long, sensitive white vibrissae, the specialized whiskers that will soon help it navigate the dark benthic zones in search of crabs and sea urchins. The air is crisp, carrying the clean, mineral scent of rain-washed stone and damp kelp. All around, the auditory landscape softens. The aggressive roar of the wind yields to the soothing, rhythmic sigh of gentle ocean swells sliding over smooth coastal rocks. Overhead, distant seabirds call out in tired, descending notes as they settle onto remote cliffs for the night. The water laps quietly against the otter's dense, waterlogged pelage, a subtle reminder of the turbulent passage just endured, and the quiet safety of the evening now beginning to unfold. Moving through the calm, amber-lit channels of the kelp forest, the subadult approaches a gathering of other sea otters resting together. There are no sudden movements, no vocalizations, only the quiet language of shared stillness. The newcomer slips gracefully into the periphery of the floating collective, finding a gentle opening between a resting mother and an older, silver-faced male. These transient autumn rafts form a fluid-being cooperative society. Unlike fixed territories, these mixed-age aggregations bring together independent subadults, experienced adults, and occasionally females with older pups. In the cooling waters of autumn, this collective arrangement serves a vital biological purpose: thermodynamic conservation. By pressing close together, overlapping tails and limbs, the otters significantly reduce their individual surface area exposed to the chill, sharing body heat as the evening temperature drops. This social clustering also provides a shared defensive vigilance, with multiple pairs of eyes scanning the darkening perimeter. Each individual can lower its guard just enough to allow for deep physiological recovery. Within the safety of the interwoven kelp stems, the raft drifts as a single breathing entity, rising and falling in unison with the gentle ocean swells. The subadult settles into the rhythm of the group, feeling the reassuring warmth of neighboring bodies as the twilight deepens around them. Yet, even within the safety of the raft, a silent hazard lingers. The turbulent storm waters have left microscopic grains of silt, salt residues, and organic particulate matter trapped deep within the otter's outer guard hairs. This unwanted debris compromises the most sophisticated insulation system in the marine world. Unlike whales or seals, sea otters possess no thick layer of blubber. Their survival depends entirely on air. Millions of tiny air bubbles must remain permanently locked within their exceptionally dense underfur, numbering up to 1 million hairs per square inch, to form a dry, impenetrable thermal barrier against the cold ocean. Without a moment's delay, the subadult initiates a rigorous, instinctive grooming sequence. Floating flat upon its back, the young otter begins to roll fluidly from side to side, exposing its silvery belly to the dim evening air. Its agile paws move in a rhythmic, determined blur. With nimble fingers and delicate teeth, it combs rapidly through the thick layers of fur, kneading the plush undercoat to dislodge the clinging grit. This meticulous manipulation does more than simply clean. It is an act of physical restoration. As the subadult works air back into the microscopic architecture of the coat, a silvery sheen spreads outward across its skin. The fur traps a fresh, insulating blanket of air, sealing out the chill of the autumn sea. With every stroke, the heavy, damp sensation fades, replaced by a cozy, buoyant warmth. The rhythmic, soft splashes of grooming blend seamlessly into the gentle rustling of the kelp fronds, a testament to the quiet, ceaseless work required to maintain life in the sea. At a microscopic level, this remarkable pelt operates as a living marvel of natural engineering. The subadult's coat consists of 2 distinct layers, long, waterproof guard hairs that form a protective outer canopy, and an astonishingly dense underfur beneath. Within that undercoat, hairs grow so tightly packed, up to 1 million per square inch, that individual water molecules struggle to find a passage down to the skin. As the otter completes its final, sweeping passes of grooming, it coaxes millions of new micro-air bubbles deep into the plush fibers. This trapped atmospheric blanket acts as an impenetrable thermal shield. The cold 50-degree Pacific water is successfully halted inches away from the dermis, keeping the otter's internal body temperature safe and warm without requiring a heavy, cumbersome layer of blubber. Instantly, the physics of buoyancy respond to the restored air barrier. The young otter's body weight shifts effortlessly, lifting higher onto the water's surface. No longer weighed down by a waterlogged coat, the subadult feels its metabolic exertion melt away. It now floats with the supreme ease of a dry leaf resting on a calm pond, expending zero muscular energy simply to stay afloat. A soft, contented sigh escapes the subadult as radiant warmth spreads across its chest and abdomen. The silvery sheen of its newly fluffed fur catches the fading twilight, glowing softly against the darkening water. Surrounded by the gentle swaying of the kelp canopy and the rhythmic pulse of the ocean swells, the young otter rests in absolute comfort, buoyed entirely by the quiet perfection of its own breath and fur. Drifting deeper into the shelter of the canopy, the subadult floats closer to the heart of the transient raft. Within this mixed-age community of resting otters, boundaries dissolve into a fluid tapestry of warm bodies. Social bonds among sea otters are maintained through quiet, constant touch, an essential behavior that helps lower heart rates and reduce stress hormones like cortisol across the entire group. A mature female resting nearby shifts slightly on the gentle swell, and her webbed hind paw drifts outward, brushing softly against the subadult's flank. The young otter responds with a slow, deliberate turn, extending its forepaws to meet hers in a fleeting, gentle grasp. For a brief moment, their paws intertwine, a touch that reinforces group security and reaffirms their cooperative ties. Nearby, two resting males touch noses in a quiet, whiskered greeting, exhaling soft puffs of warm air into the cooling evening breeze. These subtle tactile interactions ripple through the raft like a slow current. When one otter grooms, others follow, and when one rests, the shared contact anchors the collective calm. By maintaining physical connection, the otters ensure that no single animal drifts away into the open water. They become a unified, floating constellation, bound together by mutual reliance and quiet companionship. The evening light deepens from amber to a rich, velvety indigo, painting the surface of the bay in muted shades of violet and gray. As the sky darkens overhead, the subadult settles more comfortably against its neighbors, feeling the rhythmic rise and fall of their combined breathing. Safe within the center of the raft, surrounded by the comforting warmth of other lives, the young otter lets its eyes drift half-closed, lulled by the gentle swaying of the kelp and the profound peace of belonging to the group. As the velvet indigo of twilight yields to the vast, star-dusted canopy of the autumn night, the raft begins its final preparation for sleep, to prevent the gentle ebb of the tide from carrying them out toward the open ocean. The otters reach out with slender forepaws, gathering long, golden strands of Macrocystis porifera kelp. With slow, deliberate movements, they loop the tough, buoyant fronds securely across their chests, weaving themselves into a living tapestry anchored firmly to the seafloor below. The subadult tucks its sensitive, webbed hind flippers tightly against its warm, newly fluffed chest, curling its body into a compact, buoyant sphere. This posture minimizes surface area and preserves precious metabolic heat as the autumn air grows crisp. Resting flat on its back beneath the emerging constellations, the young otter feels entirely cradled by the water and the reassuring press of neighboring bodies. All around, the frantic energy of the storm-tossed day dissolves into a deep, collective quiet. The rhythmic, synchronized sound of gentle breathing rises from the raft, blending seamlessly with the soft lapping of ocean swells against fur and the rustling whisper of kelp fronds in the dark. Distant seabirds have long since settled, leaving only the profound stillness of the bay. Suspended between the deep water and the quiet sky, the subadult lets its muscles untense completely. Safe within the anchor of the kelp and the warm embrace of the group, it drifts into a deep, restorative sleep, cradled by the gentle pulse of the sea. Midnight settles softly along the Pacific coastline, bringing with it a profound drop in the late autumn air. As the stars sharpen in the clear, high-pressure sky, a crisp nocturnal breeze slips down from the forested slopes, carrying the crisp scent of coming winter. Along the rocky shorelines and protected intertidal fringes, ambient temperatures plunge well below freezing, moisture clinging to exposed barnacles, driftwood, and jagged stones freezes into delicate, intricate crystals of frost, gleaming faintly under the starlight. This thermal transition marks a sharp division in the marine world. While the terrestrial environment surrenders to the grip of the frost, the ocean water below retains a stable, though deeply chilling, temperature. This stark contrast between freezing air and the dark saline waters below creates a delicate microclimate along the sheltered bays. The gentle lapping of cold water against the frosted stones echoes softly in the stillness, accompanied by the low, steady hum of distant tide currents shifting offshore. Farther out, the soft rustling of giant kelp fronds rises and falls with the swells, swaying in rhythmic unison. the atmosphere grows heavy with quietude. A distant, solitary call of a resting seabird drifts across the bay, then fades completely into the vast expanse of the night. Nature holds its breath as the surface of the water mirrors the silver frost of the shore, preparing the coastal realm for the long, cold hours ahead. Leaving the exposed outer headlands behind, the subadult Sea Otter glides smoothly through the dark, obsidian water, steering away from the turbulent swells of the open coast. The young marine mammal relies on its hydrodynamic, torpedo-shaped form to cut effortlessly through the liquid chill. Giant, ancient cliffs rise steeply on either side, forming a natural amphitheater that shields the inner waters from the biting offshore gales. Ahead lies the deep, protected sanctuary of a coastal inlet, a vital marine microclimate where the surface tension is gentle and undisturbed. Here, dense subsurface forests of bull kelp act as a formidable aquatic breakwater, absorbing the remaining momentum of the ocean waves. The tangled fronds create a calm canopy, anchoring the water and establishing a quiet, insulating pocket removed from the harsh winter currents. Navigating this sanctuary requires subtle movements, with slow, rhythmic sweeps of its broad, webbed hind flippers. The otter cruises silently beneath the starlit surface. It searches instinctively for a secure zone of absolute tranquility, testing the water with sensitive vibrissae that detect minute temperature shifts and current eddies. The chaotic rush of the open ocean fades into a peaceful stillness, replaced by the velvety quiet of the sheltered bay. Finding an ideal patch of water untouched by the cold surface winds, the subadult slows its forward momentum. It rolls gently onto its back, settling into the calm embrace of the inlet, perfectly positioned to begin the quiet mechanics of nocturnal rest. Floating completely on its back in the freezing water, the subadult adopts a specialized resting posture to combat conductive heat loss. Because sea otters lack the thick subcutaneous blubber of whales or seals, they rely entirely on behavior and fur to maintain a core body temperature near 37 degrees Celsius. In the sub-zero chill of a late autumn night, every square inch of surface area matters. To minimize thermal radiation into the surrounding water, the young otter instinctively curves its spine, drawing its head and tail toward one another to form a compact, rounded silhouette. It then tucks its highly sensitive unwebbed hind flippers tightly against its chest, shielding the areas where blood vessels are densely concentrated near the skin. The small front paws, or forelimbs, are folded inward beneath the chin like soft mittens. This anatomical and behavioral adjustment drastically reduces the body's exposed surface area, keeping the extremities out of the chilling current. By pulling its limbs close to the torso, the otter creates a localized microzone of warmth over its vital organs. The physics of heat transfer dictate that a sphere-like shape loses far less thermal energy than an extended form, a geometric defense that proves vital for survival through long, cold nights. In this cradled, floating position, the marine mammal conserves its precious metabolic energy, resting in quiet equilibrium with the winter sea. Before drifting into complete rest, the subadult performs a final, vital ritual, dedicating its remaining wakefulness to the integrity of its coat. Unlike marine mammals that rely on thick layers of blubber to guard against the cold, the sea otter depends exclusively on air. Its pelt is the densest of any creature on Earth, boasting up to 1 million individual hairs packed tightly into every single square inch. As the cold water laps quietly against its whiskers, the young otter lifts its paws for a meticulous session of evening grooming. With rhythmic, sweeping motions, it combs through the dense underfur, working from the chest down toward the flanks. This intricate mechanical action does more than simply clean the fur. It fluffs the microscopic underhairs, trapping a crucial invisible barrier of air directly against the skin. Water must never touch the epidermis, or the consequences would be swift and fatal. Without this continuous thermal seal, the freezing ocean would rapidly sap the otter's internal heat, overwhelming its exceptionally high metabolism. By meticulously smoothing the longer guard hairs over the trapped air pockets, the subadult seals the insulation completely, creating a waterproof, buoyant shell. Satisfied with the barrier, the grooming movements slow, growing softer and more languid until the paws finally come to rest. The air layer is secure, holding a cushion of warmth between the animal's body and the deep chill of the autumn night. Breathing steadily, the young otter allows its muscles to relax entirely into the water, floating in perfect, insulated suspension beneath the quiet stars, beneath the calm expanse of the water. Resting does not mean slowing everything down. To maintain a remarkably high core body temperature of around 38 degrees Celsius in the freezing autumn sea, the subadult relies on an elevated resting metabolic rate. Its internal furnace burns constantly, consuming calories at a rapid pace even while the animal slumbers. Without the thick insulating blubber of whales or seals, the sea otter's survival depends on this relentless biochemical energy production. Specialized mitochondria within its muscle tissues generate heat efficiently, radiating warmth outward from the core to offset the constant thermal drain of the surrounding ocean. This heightened metabolism acts as a powerful engine, operating quietly through the night beneath the ribs and chest, working in absolute harmony with the coat's trapped air barrier. This metabolic output creates a reliable shield against the environmental chill. The microscopic layer of air warms rapidly to match the otter's body heat, while the outer guard hairs repel the icy water entirely. Safe inside this self-generated microclimate, the young otter drifts in a state of profound physiological balance. Energy conversion and insulation merge into a single, seamless defense against the night. The breathing remains slow and rhythmic, matching the gentle pulse of the tide currents below. Safe and suspended in the quiet inlet, the subadult rests deeply, sustained by the quiet, tireless chemistry of life burning steadily through the cold. High above the quiet coastal inlet, the winter stars burn with a sharp, diamond-like clarity, casting a faint silver sheen across the glass-smooth surface of the water. Suspended in this midnight cradle, the subadult floats completely motionless, cradled by the buoyant embrace of the sea. The crisp nocturnal breeze drifts softly across the bay, whispering through the frost-kissed fronds of giant kelp that anchor the silent underwater forest below. Each gentle lapping of cold water against the otter's fur creates a rhythmic, hypnotic cadence, blending seamlessly with the low, steady hum of distant tide currents shifting in the channel. Far off in the dark, a resting seabird issues a single, sleepy call before the world settles back into a profound, enveloping stillness. In this deep slumber, the young otter's breathing is slow and measured. Every inhale and exhale matches the gentle pulse of the ocean, a soft, steady rhythm that anchors life against the encroaching chill of the season. The self-generated microclimate of its dense underfur holds fast, preserving the vital warmth built by its relentless metabolism throughout the evening. Frost continues to trace delicate patterns along the exposed intertidal rocks at the water's edge, whispering of the deeper winter dawn soon to come. Yet here, within the sheltered heart of the inlet, time seems to pause. Safe, warm, and perfectly balanced between the icy sea and the winter sky, the subadult drifts deeper into the quiet night, wrapped in the timeless peace of the natural world. Winter arrives softly across the northern Pacific, casting a pale, pearlescent glow over the rugged coastline. Snow blankets the steep granite headlands and dusts the pine-studded shores, creating a silent contrast against the dark, obsidian sea. In the distance, the crisp winter wind carries the subdued, haunting calls of resting seabirds, echoing across a frosted bay where the water surface lies mirror calm and freezing. Near the rocky shallows, anchored gently amid the icy fronds of giant kelp, a prime adult sea otter drifts in absolute stillness. The frost clings delicately to its dense whiskers as it floats serenely on its back, conserving energy at the onset of the shortest day of the year. This marine mammal possesses no thick layer of blubber to ward off the biting chill. Instead, survival through the subpolar winter depends entirely upon a specialized integumentary system and an extraordinary metabolic rate. The gentle lapping of cold water laps rhythmically against the rocky shore, a steady pulse in a landscape hushed by the sub-zero temperatures. As the first pale rays of dawn crest the snow-capped mountains, illuminating breath curling softly in the frosty air, the otter stirs from its nocturnal slumber. With slow, deliberate grace, it rolls slightly in the water, preparing for the demanding ritual of daily maintenance that will keep the freezing ocean currents safely away from its skin through the long, quiet winter morning ahead. To conquer the freezing depths of the winter ocean, this prime adult relies on a biological marvel entirely unique in the marine world. Unlike whales, seals, and other polar mammals that depend on thick layers of subcutaneous blubber for warmth, the sea otter has evolved a different path of survival. It possesses no heavy fat reserves to buffer the biting chill. Instead, its defense against the sub-zero water lies within the densest fur coat known to nature, an astonishing engineering feat packing up to 1 million individual hairs into every single square inch of skin. This extraordinary coat is structured as a two-tiered system, featuring longer, protective guard hairs that form a waterproof canopy over a remarkably thick, plush underfur. When the otter grooms, millions of microscopic hooks and barbs interlock to create an impenetrable barrier. This dense lattice catches and holds a fragile, life-saving layer of air directly against the animal's skin. As the otter drifts quietly in the freezing bay, this trapped air acts as an invisible thermal dry suit. Frigid seawater may surround the body completely, but the actual skin remains wonderfully dry and warm, protected by the trapped oxygen molecules. Without this delicate, highly complex layer of air, the animal's body heat would rapidly dissipate into the ocean, making winter survival impossible. Maintaining this microscopic architecture requires constant, meticulous attention, transforming every waking moment into a gentle, rhythmic dance of survival beneath the quiet winter sky. Floating effortlessly on its back amidst the gentle lapping of cold water, the adult otter begins its essential morning maintenance. Every square inch of the dense coat demands attention, turning the calm surface of the bay into a stage for a rhythmic, vital dance. The otter arches its supple spine, bringing its webbed hind paws up to vigorously comb through the plush underfur, working with the quiet urgency of an animal tending to its only shield against the frost. With nimble, dexterous forepaws, it cleans, teases, and massages the hairs, nibbling gently with its teeth to remove any microscopic salt crystals or stray bits of debris. Every stroke is deliberate, designed to realign the intricate matrix of guard hairs and underfur. Because the animal lacks blubber, even a speck of dirt or a single drop of compromised oil could ruin the microscopic air seal, inviting the near-freezing ocean in and leading rapidly to fatal hypothermia. To restore the thermal barrier completely, the otter dives its face into the chilling brine, then rolls and rubs its head vigorously, trapping fresh oxygen bubbles back into the dense fleece around its brow and cheeks. It exhales tiny streams of warm breath directly into its paws, gathering the air and sweeping it deep into the undercoat. This meticulous grooming session is an absolute necessity of winter life, demanding hours of painstaking care each day. As the soft morning light catches the silver-tipped fur, the otter pauses, completely encased in its newly restored, shimmering envelope of air, bobbing serenely in the quiet embrace of the winter sea. Beneath that shimmering, buoyant quilt of air, a profound and ceaseless biological furnace burns. The calm, effortless floating of the adult belies the intense physiological demands required to survive the subpolar winter. Unlike whales or seals, the sea otter carries no thick layer of insulating blubber beneath its skin. Instead, it relies entirely upon an exceptionally rapid metabolism to generate the intense internal heat needed to maintain a core body temperature near 37 degrees Celsius in near freezing waters. This internal engine runs at a staggering rate, consuming energy equivalent to a quarter of the animal's total body weight in food every single day. The metabolic machinery is remarkably efficient, yet relentless. Digestion must occur at an accelerated pace, continually converting nutrients into pure thermal energy. While the otter rests in quiet serenity, its heart beats with a steady, elevated rhythm, pumping warmed blood through its limbs and radiating heat outward through specialized blood vessels in its paws. Every breath of crisp winter air fuels this microscopic combustion. Without this constant caloric intake, the internal fire would dim, threatening the delicate balance between life and the sub-zero sea. Yet, for now, the adult simply drifts with the tide, perfectly tuned to the quiet rhythms of the frosted bay, its body working in silent harmony to weather the deepest cold of the year. With grooming complete and body heat securely conserved, the adult shifts its focus to the challenges of the ebbing tide. It paddles gently toward the sheltering shadows of a towering kelp forest, seeking the calm refuge found within the floating canopy of Macrocystis porifera. These giant brown algae form a dense, tangled lattice at the surface, creating a natural breakwater against the crisp winter wind and the rolling motion of the outer swells. Weaving expertly through the golden brown stipes, the otter selects a particularly thick cluster of frosted fronds. It rolls gracefully onto its back, drawing the heavy, leather-like blades across its chest and wrapping them securely around its torso. These living anchors drape loosely over the animal's body, tethering it firmly to the underwater forest. The tangled stems act as a natural mooring line, preventing the resting mammal from drifting out into the open, choppy waters of the bay while it recharges its energy. The gentle, rhythmic motion of the Pacific swells rocks the anchored otter in a slow, hypnotic cradle. The frigid air brushes softly across the surface of the water, carrying the faint, muted calls of distant seabirds wheeling above the rocky shoreline. Surrounded by the frosted canopy, the adult yields completely to the embrace of the sea. The kelp fronds sway in silent unison with the deep water currents, holding the resting creature safe and steady in the quiet hush of the winter morning. As the pale winter sun climbs higher into the cloudless sky, the frosty chill softens only slightly across the sheltered bay. The prime adult stretches its broad, webbed hind flippers, letting the cold water wash over sensitive pads, and blinks sleepily against the brilliant, blinding reflection of snow-capped mountains. Every muscle unwinds in the quiet stillness, yet beneath this tranquil surface, internal engines continue to burn at a remarkable pace. To sustain a body temperature of nearly 37 degrees Celsius in freezing water, the otter's metabolism operates at a rate 3 times higher than that of a similarly sized terrestrial mammal. This furnace of energy requires constant fueling, especially as the turning season brings heavier afternoon swells and more demanding dives into the dark, frigid depths below. This peaceful interlude serves as a crucial bridge, allowing the resting animal to conserve precious calories before the afternoon tides begin their powerful surge. Floating securely within its kelp anchor, the otter breathes slowly and deeply, inhaling the crisp, salt-laden air. The distant, rhythmic crash of waves against the outer barrier reef reminds the creature of the wilder ocean waiting beyond the bay. But for now, held safely in the embrace of the morning, the otter simply rests, letting the gentle, cradle-like motion of the sea lull it into a state of quiet, restorative stillness. A low winter sun hangs low over the outer coast, casting a rich, golden amber glow across the rolling Pacific swells. Heavy, slate-gray water heaves in long, rhythmic pulses, borne from distant storms far out to sea. With every rise and fall of the ocean, the water laps softly against the rocky shoreline, accompanied by the distant, echoing calls of seabirds drifting on the wind. Amidst this vast and powerful expanse of cold water, a prime adult sea otter bobs effortlessly, tethered loosely to the surface by a tangle of giant macrocystis kelp fronds. The animal rests atop the moving water, swaying gently with the undulating swells. The thick golden light catches the tips of the otter's dense, chocolate-brown fur, turning the wet guard hairs to spun bronze against the deep, bruised blues of the winter sea. Here, in the freezing subpolar shallows, life requires an extraordinary physiological effort. Lacking the insulating layer of blubber found in other marine mammals, the sea otter relies entirely on its incomparable coat, the densest in the animal kingdom, and a blazing, hyper-accelerated metabolism to maintain its core body temperature against the biting chill. As the afternoon wind gusts sweep low across the white-capped crests, the resting adult stirs, blinking slowly against the glare of the setting sun. It takes a deep, restorative breath, expanding its lungs to maximum capacity in preparation for the physical demands ahead. Perfectly attuned to the heavy, pulsing rhythm of the darkening winter sea. To survive in waters that hover near freezing, this prime adult exists in a state of continuous biological urgency. While whales and seals rely on thick blankets of fat to retain warmth, the sea otter has taken a different evolutionary path. It possesses no blubber at all. Instead, its survival depends on an engine of pure energy, a metabolic rate that burns 3 times faster than that of a similarly sized land mammal. This internal furnace requires an immense, unending fuel supply. Day after day, through the bitterest months of the year, the adult must consume up to 25% of its total body weight just to stay warm and alive. Every waking hour is governed by this relentless requirement. The cold ocean extracts heat with ruthless efficiency, conducting warmth away from the body at a rate that would quickly prove fatal to unprotected flesh. To combat the chill, the otter's cells operate at a fever pitch, converting food into heat with marvelous biological precision. Digestion is rapid, transforming heavy meals into the thermal energy needed to keep its core steady against the winter gale. Yet this constant demand means the otter can never truly rest for long. As the golden light begins to lengthen across the rolling swells, the quiet stillness of the afternoon carries an underlying truth. The animal's life is a delicate, perpetual balance between the freezing deep below and the blazing fire within. With a gentle arch of its powerful, muscular back, the adult slips beneath the golden tip swells, leaving hardly a ripple on the surface. The transition from air to water is seamless. Descending into the murky, jade-tinted depths of the kelp forest, the animal enters a silent, shadowy world where the fierce winds of the late winter afternoon fade into a profound, liquid quiet. This deep plunge requires exquisite physiological mastery. As the otter glides downward through the heavy water column, its lungs compress gracefully under the increasing hydrostatic pressure. To conserve precious oxygen for the demanding search below, its heart rate slows in a coordinated reflex, while blood is carefully shunted away from the extremities to protect vital organs. Steering through the swirling turbulence of coastal currents demands effortless hydrodynamic grace. The otter's flattened tail acts as an expert rudder, while its webbed hind feet sweep in long, fluid strokes, perfectly navigating the dense, rustling columns of giant kelp. Thick fronds sway in slow motion with the passing swell, brushing softly against the sleek, dark fur. Every second of this descent is measured against the clock of respiratory reserve. Yet, the animal moves with deliberate calm, undisturbed by the bone-chilling cold that permeates the deep benthic zone. It glides past swaying holdfasts and shadowy rock faces, descending deeper and deeper toward the rocky seafloor where high-calorie treasures wait in the dim winter twilight. Reaching the rocky seafloor, the otter settles lightly among the jagged crevices and shadowy boulders of the benthic zone. Here, In the dim, greenish-blue gloom of late afternoon, the hunt for high-calorie sustenance begins. Lacking the protective blubber of other marine mammals, this prime adult relies entirely on its rapid metabolism and an unending supply of rich food to maintain a core body temperature near 37 degrees Celsius. The search is guided not by sight, but by touch. The otter sweeps its face back and forth across the rocky substrate, utilizing long, highly sensitive facial vibrissae, its stiff white whiskers. These specialized hairs detect the subtlest movements in the water, tracking the shifting currents and locating the hidden silhouettes of prey tucked tightly into protective crannies. Fingers nimble and perceptive, the forepaws probe deeply into the crevices. The animal bypasses smaller, less rewarding items, exercising a strict selection process that prioritizes energy-dense meals. Its paws encounter the spiky, calcareous shell of a large red sea urchin, heavily laden with rich gonadal tissue, and moments later, a heavy-shelled rock crab scuttling across the stone. These prized benthic invertebrates pack the concentrated calories necessary to fuel the otter's internal furnace through the freezing winter night. With practiced dexterity, the adult grasps the heavy urchin and the writhing crab, tucking them securely into loose folds of skin beneath its forelegs that serve as natural foraging pockets. Its lungs now empty and its oxygen reserves drawing low, the otter prepares to leave the quiet sea floor, tightening its grip around the hard-won harvest before kicking powerfully upward toward the sunlit surface above. Breaking the surface tension, the otter exhales a soft, misty breath into the chilly winter air, tilting its sleek head back to clear its dark eyes. Rolling fluidly onto its buoyant back, the adult assumes its signature resting posture, perfectly cradled by the rolling ocean swells. The heavy, hard-won harvest of red urchin and rock crab is promptly transferred from the skin fold pockets beneath its forelegs and placed directly upon its broad, fur-covered chest. To prevent the relentless winter surge and coastal wind gusts from sweeping the resting animal out into the open, deeper channel, the otter reaches out with nimble paws. It gathers thick, golden strands of floating macrocystis kelp, draping the robust fronds loosely across its torso. This natural anchor entwines the otter gently within the swaying canopy, holding it securely in place like a soft, living hammock amidst the rhythmic lapping of the water. With the heavy swell rocking it in a slow, hypnotic cadence, the adult begins the vital task of processing its meal. Because a prime sea otter must consume roughly 25% of its body weight in food every single day to fuel its blazing internal furnace, efficiency is everything. Its powerful jaws make short work of the tough, calcareous shells, unlocking the calorie-dense tissues within. Every morsel ingested supplies the essential chemical energy required to maintain its internal core temperature against the chill of the subpolar sea. Distant seabird calls drift across the darkening water as the otter lingers peacefully in the kelp, savoring the warmth of its hard-earned nourishment. With the last sweet morsel digested and the heavy, mineral-rich shells set adrift into the darkening current, the prime adult turns its attention to the most crucial daily ritual of all. Beneath the surface of the water, survival relies entirely upon a microscopic marvel of engineering, the densest fur coat in the entire animal kingdom. Because sea otters possess no thick layer of blubber to insulate them from the frigid subpolar winter, they depend completely on millions of tiny, interlocked hairs to trap a vital, insulating layer of air against their skin. Drifting among the rustling kelp fronds, the adult begins a slow, methodical grooming session. Nimble paws and flexible claws comb meticulously through the dark underfur, trapping thousands of tiny air bubbles deep within the soft fibers. This frantic yet practiced churning creates a shimmering, silver thermal shield that completely prevents the freezing ocean water from ever touching the otter's sensitive skin. With every stroke, the dense coat is fluffed, cleaned, and carefully sealed against the damp evening air. As the golden winter light surrenders to the deep blues and purples of twilight, the grooming slows into gentle, rhythmic motions. The heavy ocean swells continue their steady, hypnotic roll, rocking the buoyant animal with a slow and predictable grace. Completely waterproof, comfortably warm, and deeply nourished from its successful benthic harvest, the adult lets its paws rest gently upon its chest. Tucking its dark muzzle close to its body, the otter closes its eyes and drifts into a profound, restorative slumber, cradled safely by the quiet sea. The winter sun sinks low behind the jagged shoulders of the coastal peaks, bleeding muted gold and bruised lavender across the heavy snowfields. Above the protected rocky bay, the sky transitions into a vast canopy of deep indigo, pierced by the first pale shimmers of evening stars. The air is subpolar and biting, holding the crisp, pristine scent of frost and salt. Yet beneath the surface, the ocean maintains a steadfast, life-sustaining warmth, buffered by the profound depths of the sea. Drifting quietly within the calm embrace of the cove, a prime adult sea otter rests at the water's surface. This marine mammal is a master of survival in an unforgiving climate, relying not on thick layers of subcutaneous blubber, but on the densest fur in the animal kingdom. Nearly 1 million individual hairs per square inch form an impenetrable velvet barrier that keeps the freezing water entirely away from the skin. Surrounding the resting animal, a thick bed of giant kelp sways in a slow, rhythmic dance with the low-frequency ocean swell. The fronds murmur softly against one another, creating a gentle acoustic backdrop of rustling kelp fronds and the distant, fading calls of gulls settling into their rocky roosts. The water laps soothingly around the otter's sleek silhouette, mirroring the quiet stillness spreading across the inlet. As the last embers of sunset fade from the horizon, the water's surface smooths into a sheet of dark glass, perfectly cradling the resting creature as twilight deepens. Here, at the boundary between two worlds, the otter exists in a delicate physiological balance. The air above the cove drops rapidly into freezing stillness, carrying a sharp edge that would chill an unprotected mammal to the core within minutes. Yet the water below, hovering near 38 degrees Fahrenheit, offers a refuge of stable, albeit frigid, thermal mass. Positioned half submerged at the surface, the animal bridges these two contrasting environments. Unlike whales or seals, the sea otter possesses no layer of insulating blubber to retain its internal heat. Instead, it relies entirely upon its remarkable coat and an exceptionally high metabolic rate, burning calories at a pace nearly 3 times that of a terrestrial mammal of similar size. To prevent the biting frost of the evening air from stealing its precious core heat, the otter periodically rotates its position. The wet outer guard hairs freeze quickly in the subpolar draft, forming a protective, icy shell that ironically helps shield the dry underfur from the wind's chill. Every breath forms a brief, rising plume of vapor, dissolving into the quiet air as the faint wind brushes lightly over the water's surface. The physics of thermoregulation here demand constant, meticulous maintenance. Even in repose, the animal's survival depends on the trapped microscopic pockets of air nestled deep within its plush fibers. As the shadows lengthen across the bay, this remarkable biological armor holds the winter cold at bay, sustaining life in the heart of the wilderness. This living thermal defense rests upon an architectural marvel of the natural world, the densest fur coat of any creature on Earth. Within every single square inch of skin, up to 1 million individual hairs grow in tightly packed harmony. It is a biological marvel built without a single drop of insulating blubber, requiring instead an ingenious system of trapped atmosphere. As the fading light deepens to violet, the prime adult dedicates itself to an intricate ritual of grooming. Using nimble paws and flexible digits, the animal rolls, kneads, and combs deep into the plush underfur. This meticulous motion serves a vital physiological purpose, By working through the damp fibers, the otter traps microscopic pockets of air directly against its skin, creating an impenetrable dry barrier that keeps the freezing ocean water entirely at bay. The outer guard hairs form a waterproof canopy, sealing the chamber of warmth beneath. If even a tiny fraction of this delicate air layer were to escape, the animal's skin would wet instantly, leading to rapid, fatal hypothermia in the 38-degree tide. Every stroke of the paws is precise, fluffing the downy underlayer to restore maximum loft and insulation. With every pass of its claws, the otter ensures that the air barrier is fully replenished. This biological velvet not only deflects the liquid chill, but also maintains a buoyant cushion, allowing the resting mammal to float effortlessly at the surface. Satisfied with the seal of its coat, the otter lets its paws fall still against its chest, enveloped in its own manufactured warmth as the long winter night settles over the quiet bay. As darkness begins to gather over the dark headlands, a new challenge faces the resting mammal. Even with its extraordinary thermal coat, remaining stationary in a shifting marine environment requires a deliberate behavioral adaptation. The tide has begun to turn, whispering against the granite stones of the shoreline, threatening to draw the resting animal out toward the open, turbulent channels. To anchor itself against the midnight currents, the adult reaches out with sensitive, webbed paws to harvest the surrounding canopy. It selects long, leathery strands of giant kelp, known scientifically as Macrocystis porifera. With slow, deliberate movements, the otter gathers the golden brown ribbons and begins to twist them securely around its torso, looping the sturdy algal fronds over and under its body like a living quilt. This ancient anchoring behavior transforms the flexible kelp into a natural mooring line. The buoyant pneumatocysts, gas-filled bulbs along the kelp stems, keep the canopy gently lifted at the surface, while the intertwined blades hold the animal fast within the calm cradle of the bay. Securely wrapped and softly tethered to the underwater forest, the otter no longer needs to expend precious metabolic energy fighting the invisible pull of the sea. The rustling of kelp fronds fades into a rhythmic, soothing murmur as the fronds tighten their hold, cradling the mammal in a safe green embrace. Sheltered from the open ocean, the anchored otter yields completely to the gentle rocking motion of the bay, drifting into a state of deep, undisturbed rest while the long winter night closes in around the quiet coast. With the kelp secure, the adult shifts into its classic dorsal resting posture, floating comfortably upon its back like a furry leaf upon the tide. Every anatomical adaptation now works in quiet unison to conserve core warmth as the subpolar air bites harder. Because sea otters lack the thick subcutaneous blubber of whales or seals, their survival depends entirely on this posture and the remarkable geometry of their bodies. The otter extends its broad, flattened tail straight out behind it, letting the appendage trail flatly across the surface of the water to minimize thermal drag. More importantly, its sensitive, webbed hind flippers, richly supplied with blood vessels, are pulled entirely away from the cold water and tucked tightly against the warm fur of its chest. By drawing these vulnerable extremities inward, the animal drastically reduces its exposed surface area, shielding its most vital zones from the ambient chill. The low-frequency ocean swell gently rocks the anchored bundle, yet the otter's form remains compact and centered. Its head is tilted slightly upward, keeping nose and whiskers clear of the lapping brine. Deep within the dense underfur, trapped air bubbles continue to form a radiant thermal barrier, sealing body heat within the pelt's labyrinth. The metabolic engine inside this prime adult dials down just enough for rest, burning calories efficiently to maintain a core temperature nearly matching that of a human. Surrounded by the faint, rushing whisper of wind over water and the distant, lonely call of a gull, the mammal drifts deeper into stillness. Protected by posture and biology alike, the resting otter surrenders to the steady, rhythmic pulse of the sea. The final embers of sunset dissolve from the sky, leaving the protected bay bathed in shades of midnight blue and starlight. The last faint wind over water softens into a mere breath, carrying the chill of the subpolar night down from the snow-dusted ridges above. Distant gull calls fade entirely, swallowed by the quiet expansion of darkness. The adult otter floats motionless in the center of the dark bay. The gentle water lapping against the kelp fronds provides a steady, hypnotic metronome, while the low-frequency ocean swell rolls beneath the anchored bundle with slow, predictable grace. Every breath is calm and measured, drawing in the crisp, cold air and releasing a faint, ghostly plume of mist into the stillness. Protected by the extraordinary insulating properties of its million hair per square inch pelt, the animal feels none of the biting frost touching the surface of the water. Deep within the underfur, the microscopic architecture of trapped air remains completely undisturbed, acting as a dry, thermal blanket against the freezing sea. The metabolic furnace within its core continues to hum at a steady, restorative pace, converting digested nourishment into the radiant heat required to sustain life in these demanding northern waters. With its webbed feet still tucked close against its chest and its body securely wrapped within the vegetative embrace of the giant kelp, the otter slowly closes its eyes. Lulled by the rhythmic wash of the Pacific swells against the floating leaves, the animal drifts deeper into the quiet heart of the winter night, surrendering fully to the peace of the sheltered inlet. The last bruised embers of winter twilight fade from the jagged northern horizon, yielding the sheltered marine cove to the deepest, longest night of the year. Above the water, a high-pressure subpolar front strips away the lingering cloud cover, exposing a vast, diamond-sharp star field that wheels slowly across the velvet expanse of space. Below, the dark, heavy swells of the Pacific pulse with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, carrying the ancient chill of the open ocean against the granite bulwarks of the coast. Within this protected inlet, the water settles into a profound and restorative stillness. Gliding silently through the ink-black surface comes an aging adult sea otter. Decades of navigating these waters have etched the map of the cove deep into his muscle memory. Without a wasted stroke of his webbed hind flippers, he moves through the submerged contours of the rocky reefs, guided entirely by the familiar press of currents and the tactile memory of the ocean floor. At this stage in his life, every calorie counts. The approaching winter frost demands strict metabolic conservation, and his thick, double-layered pelage, the densest of any mammal on Earth, boasting up to 1 million hair follicles per square inch, traps a vital insulating layer of air against his skin. He does not shiver, instead his body relies on continuous, specialized heat production and quiet efficiency to maintain his core temperature against the biting air. As he nears the center of the cove, the soft, low-frequency resonance of gentle breathing rises above the lapping water, signaling the sanctuary of the collective raft waiting just ahead in the dark. Ahead of him, the winter raft materializes as a low, undulating silhouette upon the black water. It is a massive, closely packed assembly of dozens of resting otters, a time-tested social hierarchy where prime adults anchor the perimeter, while the most vulnerable and the oldest find sanctuary at the stable core. Approaching with infinite care, the senior male does not disrupt the quiet communion. He glides into the outer perimeter, his whiskers brushing against the flank of a neighboring animal. A low, contented vocalization, a soft, rumbling chirp barely audible above the tide, passes between them, a quiet acknowledgement rooted in decades of shared coastal survival. The physical dynamics of the raft are a masterpiece of seasonal adaptation. By pressing their bodies together, the otters dramatically reduce their individual surface area exposed to the freezing night air. This collective huddling creates a shared microclimate of warmth, mitigating the relentless draw of the subpolar wind. Weaving gently through the floating mass, the aging otter slips further inward. He reaches out with nimble, sensitive forepaws, tangling his loose skin and fur with the thick, buoyant strands of giant kelp. These submarine anchors act as natural mooring lines, tethering the entire assembly in place and preventing the midnight currents from sweeping the sleeping collective out toward the open, hazardous sea. He drifts into the thermal heart of the raft, surrounded on all sides by the steady, rhythmic warmth of his conspecifics. His muscles finally uncoil. The biting chill of the ocean recedes, replaced by the deep, restorative security of the collective. To safeguard against the relentless pull of midnight tides, the raft employs a brilliant behavioral adaptation rooted in the surrounding marine ecosystem. Giant kelp, or Macrocystis porifera, serves as nature's anchor. Its robust, leather-like stipes rise from the rocky seabed far below, terminating in buoyant gas bladders that form a dense, floating canopy at the surface. With practiced ease refined over many winters, the aging adult reaches out with sensitive forepaws. He gathers several thick, flexible strands of the golden brown algae, looping them securely over his chest and around his torso. This instinctive maneuver weaves the otters directly into the submerged forest, tethering the entire floating assembly to the immovable contours of the ocean floor. These resilient kelp stems act as natural shock absorbers. As subterranean swells roll into the sheltered cove, the elastic algae stretches and yields, absorbing the kinetic energy of the water rather than transmitting it to the resting animals. The gentle rise and fall of the swell becomes a slow, hypnotic rocking motion, cradling the raft instead of disrupting it. Secured within this organic hammock, the senior otter feels no need to paddle or adjust his position. His dense underfur, trapping a vital layer of insulating air against his skin, remains completely dry beneath the canopy. By delegating the task of mooring to the anchored kelp, his body conserves precious metabolic energy, a critical survival strategy when the water temperature hovers near freezing and every calorie counts. All around him, dozens of other otters are similarly wrapped, forming a vast, interwoven tapestry of fur and foliage that breathes as one upon the dark, quiet sea. Floating quietly within the safety of the kelp canopy, the senior otter engages in a profound biological balancing act. Because sea otters lack the thick subcutaneous blubber of whales or seals, they rely entirely on an exceptionally high basal metabolic rate to generate the internal heat needed to survive the subpolar winter. Yet, during the coldest months, maintaining this furnace requires an enormous caloric intake that can be difficult to secure when storms restrict foraging. To resolve this challenge, the aging animal's physiology shifts into a specialized state of energy conservation. He floats entirely on his back, folding his webbed hind paws tightly against his chest and tucking his sensitive forelimbs close to his chin. This posture significantly reduces his exposed surface area, minimizing convective heat loss to the freezing night air. Every movement is quiet and deliberate, designed to preserve the vital calories stored beneath his skin. Inside his remarkable coat, over 1 million hairs per square inch trap a continuous layer of insulating air. This dense underfur acts as a thermal shield, ensuring that the icy seawater never actually touches his skin. As he rests, his respiration slows into a deep, rhythmic cadence. The metabolic demands of his body gently dial down, allowing him to rest deeply without depleting the precious fat reserves accumulated during the autumn bounty. Decades of survival have fine-tuned this resting strategy, teaching his experienced body how to draw inward, resting with quiet, enduring strength upon the dark midnight swells. Across the dark, glassy surface of the cove, the acoustic landscape settles into a gentle, restorative rhythm. The night is filled with a low, ambient symphony born of water, wind, and shared life. Outside the kelp canopy, distant ocean swells roll in with a slow, hypnotic pulse, washing softly against the dense, buoyant fur of the sleeping raft. The fronds of the giant kelp sway beneath the surface, emitting a faint, rhythmic creak as they shift with the tide. At the center of this floating community, breathing becomes a collective anchor. Dozens of otters inhale and exhale in a soft, overlapping cadence that sounds much like the sighing of the sea itself. This synchronized respiration is more than just a background sound. It is an auditory web of reassurance. Low-frequency contact coos, barely audible above the wash of the water, pass quietly between neighboring adults. A gentle chirp or a muted murmur ripples through the raft, confirming that all is secure, reinforcing social bonds that have weathered many seasons together. Scientific monitoring reveals that these subtle acoustic cues help maintain the structural integrity of the raft through the long hours of darkness. By staying in auditory contact, the otters ensure no single animal drifts away into the freezing expanse. For the senior otter, enveloped by the warmth of his companions, the acoustic environment is a cradle of profound safety. The sound of rhythmic breathing and the gentle lapping of water against his chest create an unchanging, peaceful background, guiding the mind toward stillness and deep, dreamless rest beneath the starlit winter sky. As the middle hours of the winter night pass in profound stillness, the aging adult remains cradled safely at the very center of the floating community. Here, sheltered on all sides by the warm bodies of his companions, the severe subpolar cold loses its bite. The dense, waterproof underfur, a miraculous evolutionary adaptation containing up to 1 million hairs per square inch, maintains a vital, insulating microclimate against the freezing sea. Trapped air bubbles within this thick labyrinth of fibers prevent the frigid water from ever reaching his skin, allowing his metabolism to rest without burning precious calories on emergency thermogenesis. Decades of survival have taught this senior animal how to husband his energy with absolute efficiency, lowering his heart rate into a slow, restorative rhythm that matches the gentle, hypnotic rise and fall of the dark ocean swells. The world outside this quiet cove is vast and frozen, but within the steadfast core of the raft, time slows to a tranquil crawl. The occasional, muted murmur of a neighbor ripples softly through the water, a fleeting reminder of company before dissolving back into silence. As the stars slowly wheel across the clear winter sky, the scene fades softly into a deep, unbroken peace, anchored by the steady pulse of the sea and the quiet, enduring resilience of the aging sea otter. High above the cold Pacific, the winter stars burn with a sharp, diamond-like brilliance, slowly fading into the vast indigo of a pre-dawn sky. Down in the sheltered embrace of the submarine forest, the water is a realm of absolute serenity. Here, cradled by the buoyant, leather-hued fronds of giant kelp, Macrocystis porifera, an aging sea otter rests motionless. He drifts with the subtle, rhythmic pulse of a deep ocean swell, completely untethered from the frantic currents of the open sea. At this stage in his life, gerontological changes have softened the once ebony mask of his face into a distinguished frost of silver and gray. Yet, within the quiet sanctuary of the benthic stability below, where ancient rock anchors the forest against winter storms, he finds a profound, enduring peace. The kelp canopy acts as a natural thermal blanket, trapping a layer of calm water and minimizing heat loss. To conserve precious metabolic energy, his dense underfur, meticulously maintained over a lifetime, holds a microscopic layer of insulating air against his skin, ensuring his body temperature remains stable in the chill. Around him, the kelp fronds sway in slow motion, brushing together with the soft rustling sound of dry parchment. From far out across the dark expanse of water comes the solitary, mournful call of a distant seabird, melting quickly into the gentle lapping of waves against the coastline. A low, whistling wind skims over the surface above, but down in this watery cradle, the disturbance is nothing more than a faint, distant whisper. He exhales softly, releasing a tiny cluster of silver bubbles that drift upward toward the fading stars, anchoring himself deeper into the living tapestry of the sea. He lingers in the silent water, a master of survival whose journey is etched into the very texture of his being. His coat, spanning a lifetime of tides, tells a quiet story of resilience. The once dark guard hairs along his flanks and shoulders have softened into a distinguished, shimmering silver, catching the faint, indigo shadows of the pre-dawn deep. This silvered crown is the hallmark of seniority, earned through countless seasons of hunting, grooming, and navigating the vast, changing Pacific. Even now, resting at the threshold of sleep, his instincts remain finely tuned. With movements as deliberate and slow as the turning of the earth, his paws rise to glide through the dense underfur. This meticulous, unhurried grooming is essential for gerontological survival. Every stroke rearranges the millions of microscopic hairs per square inch, sealing out the numbing winter chill and trapping a vital layer of insulating air directly against his skin. By maintaining this natural thermal barrier, his body conserves precious metabolic warmth without wasting energy. He smooths the silver-tipped fur across his chest, pausing to ensure every pocket of air is secure within the plush fibers. His movements are graceful, practiced through years of repetition, flowing effortlessly into the surrounding stillness, floating almost weightlessly within the amber cradle of the kelp forest. He feels the gentle, comforting pressure of the water. Wrapped in this dense silver blanket of his own making, he drifts deeper into the quiet sanctuary of the night, perfectly buoyant, perfectly warm, and completely at peace. Beneath him, the benthic community pulses with a steady, enduring stability. Generations of urchins, abalone, and anemones anchor themselves to the rocky reef, sustained by the very ecosystem legacy he has helped uphold throughout his long life. As a keystone species, every dive and every foraging season of his youth contributed to the flourishing health of this underwater wilderness, keeping the kelp canopy dense and protective. Now, the forest cradles him in return. All around, the deep ocean swell moves with a timeless, rhythmic pulse. These ancient ocean rhythms have dictated the cadence of his existence since the first breath he took as a tiny pup, floating in this exact same amber sanctuary. The slow rise and fall of the water bridges decades of memory, from the frantic energy of youth to the profound stillness of the present hour. Each swell passes through the stipes and fronds with a soft, rustling sigh, reminding him that life is part of an unbroken cycle. No single season stands alone. Every stage flows naturally into the next, ensuring the continuity of the population along the rugged Pacific coastline. The low whistling wind brushes across the surface of the sea, carrying the distant, lonely call of a waking seabird. Yet down here, in the quiet heart of the floating raft, time stretches thin and formless. He rests in the center of the resting group, surrounded by companions who share the same ancient rhythm of breath and tide. In this quiet refuge, the passage of years dissolves into the gentle lapping of the water, leaving only the deep, enduring peace of the ocean cradle holding him safe within the dark. All around him, in the pre-dawn gloom, familiar silhouettes rise and fall with the undulating swell. Here, within the heart of the floating raft, dozens of sea otters drift together in a secure, interconnected union. They are linked by more than just affectionate proximity. They are bound by the shared evolutionary necessity of thermal conservation. In the chilling grasp of a winter Pacific night, this communal bundling preserves precious metabolic energy. By pressing their dense insulated bodies close, they create a living quilt of warmth, reducing heat loss against the biting cold of the water. The aging male feels the reassuring press of a companion against his flank, a gentle, anchored presence that anchors him softly against the drift. A low, rhythmic murmuring of contented breaths vibrates through the water, a chorus of soft chuffs and sighs passing quietly from one resting body to the next. In this communal sanctuary, safety is multiplied. Vigilance is shared across the raft, allowing each individual to let down their guard completely and surrender to deep, restorative sleep. He shifts slightly, weaving his silver-tipped paws with those of his neighbors in a traditional holding pattern that prevents the tide from separating them. The collective weight of the raft subdues the surface chop, creating a pocket of profound stillness right in the middle of the winter sea. Surrounded by the gentle nudges and steady heartbeats of his kin, he settles deeper into the buoyant kelp. Safe within the cradle of his family, cradled by the ancient forest he spent a lifetime protecting, he drifts further into the comforting embrace of the night. High above the quiet Pacific, a subtle shift begins to stir the edges of the night. Far beyond the sheltered kelp forest, the highest snow-capped peaks of the distant coastline catch the very first whisper of dawn. A pale, ethereal light brushes across the jagged ridges, turning ancient glacial ice from deep indigo to a soft, luminous rose. This gradual transition of color rolls slowly down the mountain slopes, chasing away the shadows of the forest and sweeping silently down toward the sea. Across the glassy surface of the bay, the amber glow of morning spreads in a wide, gentle wash. The dark water transforms into a mirror of liquid gold, reflecting the waking sky. Beneath this quiet alchemy, the deep ocean swell continues its steady, timeless pulse, lifting the floating kelp canopy in a slow, rhythmic dance. The blades of giant kelp sway languidly in the translucent current, catching the filtered rays of the new day and casting shimmering patterns of light through the water column. The distant, solitary call of a seabird echoes softly across the bay, carrying on a low whistling wind that whispers through the rocky headlands. Yet, within the center of the resting raft, the world remains suspended in profound tranquility. Bathed in the warm, horizontal light of early morning, the otters drift undisturbed, their silver-tipped fur catching the golden illumination. The aging male rests serenely at the heart of this interconnected community, cradled by the buoyant fronds and warmed by the gentle, collective breath of his kin. As the first true light of day touches the water, the ancient rhythm of the ocean cradles him deeper into peace. In this sanctuary of benthic stability, the passage of seasons finds a gentle equilibrium. The aging otter's dense underfur, refined by a lifetime of meticulous care, continues to trap a microscopic layer of insulating air, a marvel of thermal conservation that ensures absolute warmth against the chill of the winter sea. Surrounded by the thriving legacy he helped sustain, his life force weaves seamlessly into the broader tapestry of the marine ecosystem. The flourishing kelp forest, robust and resilient because of generations of predators keeping urchin populations in check, provides a secure, permanent cradle for the community. Here, at the confluence of gerontology and timeless natural rhythms, the boundary between the individual and the ocean blurs. Each slow swell of the tide carries the whisper of continuity, connecting past dives and forgotten summers to the quiet stillness of this winter dawn. He rests at the very center of the raft, anchored not just by the emerald fronds winding softly around his flanks, but by the quiet presence of the generations rising around him. The low whistling wind fades into a gentle hush across the glassy bay. The water laps softly against his silver-tipped coat, rocking him in an ancient, unbroken cadence. As the golden light of the new day settles over the Pacific, the weary limbs relax completely into the buoyant embrace of the deep. In the heart of the ancient kelp forest, beneath the vast and quiet sky, the journey settles into a deep, eternal sleep, cradled forever by the rhythmic breathing of the sea.